Hello, BookTube. Very sorry for the delay. The delay was the exact same reason it was the last time I was delayed. I thought I would squeeze in one last little dog walk before the Stevestream, and that 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 worked. But as I've mentioned before on these Steve streams and on videos, Freeda has virtually nothing in the way of night vision. Really kind of strange. My own night vision is exceptional, and so I'm accustomed to humans thinking that every blob or every shadow is a Sasquatch. But I always expect that dog's night vision will be better. It further confirms sort of a hypothesis of mine that dogs that were bred for centuries to be indoor dogs, to not encounter the natural world, uh, tend to start shaving off the excesses and tend to start having senses that range much more in the human parameter. It's the only thing I can think of. I've never known a so-called working dog, an outdoor dog, that had bad night vision. Uh, Certainly not as bad as Freda's. So we were out there, and she was jumping at every shadow, and that delayed us. So I'm back now. Uh, a very happy day, and I want to report that part of that reason for why it's a happy day is writing, which has not been true for the last almost a week. February was supposed to start the Steve Donahue Writing Collective, where we write something for February and March at about the clip of 1,000 words a day. And since there's no ceiling on word count for the writing collective, since we're not saying you're writing towards 50,000 words, for instance, like at NaNoWriMo, it's okay for you to start late because how much you write will just be how much you write in February and March. If your goal is 1,000 words a day and you get to 1,000 words a day, well then if you start 6 days late, for instance, or a week late, you're still going to have a large amount of work when you're done. If once you figure out your project and get your reading routines in place, you are doing 1,000 words a day. It's just no project was coming to me at all. None that I liked was coming to me at all. Or was one. I told myself for days that no project that I liked was coming to me. But that isn't true. And I need to remember conversations about writing that I had in Hyde Cottage, well, the Hyde Cottage of the day, with an old friend of mine who's long gone, but who was a very, very good writer and also very good writing about writing and teaching writing. And he used to say a lot about writing, especially writing fiction, especially writing clean slate fiction, which is what we want to do for the writing collective. Some new work that you're doing. I don't know that I'm going to be able to do his those long rambling discussions justice in a thumbnail compression, but his point was that if there is not his point was that if you turn your back on your personal predilections, if you uh, as he put it, ignore your own moral landscape, then whatever you're writing will be false. And other people in the room, one editor in particular who'd never had the nerve to try his hand at writing anything fiction, said, "Well, you think he actually grabbed the New York Times at the time I subscribed to the New York Times, and he grabbed the New York Times and said, "Do you think the people who are the best sellers here in the book review are consulting their moral landscape? They're obviously not." And my friend said, "No, they're not." And that's great. They've got mansions in Larchmont. They've got a pool. They can pay for their kids' college, but they're writing something that's dead. They're writing something that's bankrupt because it's not them. So somebody who's going to find that 1,000 years from now or 100 years from now and go looking for the truth of it is not going to find any because there isn't any truth in I have to admit, his discussions on this kind of subject really didn't sit well with the rooms of writers and editors that I used to have gather here every Friday at the time. His comments about a moral landscape or about truth with a capital T didn't sit well with these hard drinking cynics that were in the room. They did sit well with me, but I felt awkward about admitting that. Uh, Even though I could see the truth of what he was saying. And I have since preached the truth of what he was saying endlessly to endless groups of people, writing groups, workshops, classrooms. that um, I don't want to say anything as trite as that you have to believe in what you're writing. That sounds terrible, although it is on one level absolutely true. Instead, I want to say what I've said on this channel before, which is that it has to be what you want to write, what you actually want to write, not what you don't. I don't want to write now, but I want the result of what I'll write. You have to want to write it now. The very thing that you're thinking of has to be a thing that you actively want to write. Otherwise, you are turning your back on your I'm herniating my conversation here to avoid using the word moral, but you are turning your back on the thing, on the living heart, on the truth of what you're writing. And it's amazing how easy it can be to do that, to turn your back like that. It's amazing. Society, uh, I don't want to get all repo man on you either, but society encourages us towards a kind of transactional utilitarian thinking about everything, but certainly about writing. Well, I don't know, is this going to do well? Oh, I don't know, people are going to like this. Oh, I don't know, is there a chance this will take off? All of the wrong questions to ask, all of them. And the friend who sat in, well, I'm pointing at this room, but it wasn't this room, but you know what I mean. It was the equivalent of Hyde Cottage at the time, a long, long time ago. That friend never wrote anything other than for that reason, for himself. I, he would bridle. He would bridle if I said he did it for himself. But according to what was true to him, he never wrote anything that wasn't that way. He had book contracts and freelance contracts all the time. I never knew him when he wasn't at work. But he never did that. Never. And I suppose some of those hard drinking cynics, if any of them were still alive, there are only two of us from those days that are still alive. Uh, and only one who's still in the business, and that would be me. If those old cynics could be here now and hear me say this to a whole bunch of people that are my imaginary booktube friends on a platform through a device that none of us even dreamt of, and all of this is just fantasy. What I'm living in now is just it wasn't even dreamt of. But if they could be here, first of all, I would love to see them. I would love to see them. We would we'd send somebody out for a crate of wine, and we would have a wonderful time. It would be wonderful. But if they were here listening to me say this, they would say, "Well, yeah, he never wrote anything except according to his precious moral landscape. And where are his books now? You're showing me a calendar. I don't have a calendar. First of all, it's on my iPad. Or you're going to show me a picture of a newspaper. I don't have any newspapers. They don't exist anymore. They're on my iPad. And I don't have a camera anymore. It's on my iPad. But if I were to get them past all that and show them the date, they would say, all right, well, yeah. So he went on and on about being true to yourself, writing your own truth, writing according to your moral landscape. And it's 50 years later and his books are gone. So, well, there you go. So that and I'm sure that I can hear them saying it in such a way as to imply that that meant what he was saying was wrong. That doesn't mean that at all. It doesn't mean that at all. You go to his books. If you go to his books, you will see truth. You will see someone writing writing what he wants to write in the world, regardless of its reception, regardless of what anyone else thinks. And that is true. That's not, of course, true for just one person. It's true for a lot of people who have written. And I was reminded of it all this horrible 6 days where I have not had a project. When a lot of you have been emailing me saying that you do, that a project came to you right away. You have been writing. A lot of you have been emailing me saying that you have been writing and that it has felt good. That's great. I sort of came up with this collective. I wanted to be right there in the thick of it, and the whole time every idea that came to my mind, I was saying, "No, that won't really work. No, that won't really go. Oh, you can't make 2 months out of that." When it turns out, what I was saying was, eh, I don't know how that's going to go over. When I know perfectly well no one's going to read what I write. Oh, I'm not contemplating sharing any of this stuff any more than I've shared anything that I've done for NaNoWriMo. And yet I was thinking it. And one of the foremost things I was thinking was the same thing I thought in the run up to writing my last NaNoWriMo project, Viofala, which is not only nobody's going to like this, but nobody writes this kind of thing anymore. In other words, for the last 6 days, I have not had the courage of my convictions. I have not put my money where my mouth is. I have not followed the very advice that I have been browbeating into my imaginary booktube friends for 8 years. I was not following that advice. And finally, this morning, I don't know what it was, on the dog walk this morning, the levers just clacked into place. I was looking over the handful of ideas that made it through the tumblers, the handful of ideas that where I know it's not moral considerations. It's just there were a handful of ideas where I thought, no, that obviously won't work. No, or I dismissed them for purely practical reasons, not for any of the crowd chasing reasons I'm talking about now. But when I was done dismissing a whole bunch of ideas for that reason, it left me with a small handful. Excuse me, a small handful of possibilities. And on the dog walk this morning, I was looking over those possibilities. I was reviewing each one of them. And I realized one of them, I thought, I looked at one of them and thought, "Hmm, I actually want to write that. And I know exactly how I want to write it. And those alcoholic old cynics who aren't here anymore, who used to be in this room every Friday, if they looked at that, would say, pretty schmaltzy. Huh? You want some violins with that? And I don't care. I don't care what their shades say. I don't care what anyone else says. I want to write this thing. I went through the list and realized I want to write this. I want to write this thing. I want to create this story and put it out in the world, or at least have it exist, even if it's on my computer. I want to do this. And the minute I thought that, everything was as clear as a bell. I looked at that small list of possibilities and saw immediately the one I most wanted to do. It's one that I mentioned on last night's Stevestream. I was so in the cloud. I was so befuddled about why we write anything that it wasn't clear to me at all. Of course, it's the story about an old publishing house, and the people that make it up. The story will be called The Trials of Esther because the house is Esther House, the Esther House publishers. It was the people element of it that got through to me. The minute I realized that that was the story I wanted to write, it was like I opened a door and the whole cast of the novel came walking through the door. I know everything's going to happen now in broad strokes. It's not as clear as Viofala, but to tell you the truth, I've almost had no writing project in my life be as clear as Viofala was. So I'm not expecting that, but this is obviously what I'm going to do. So when the night's work is done, and there's business before pleasure, and then there's pleasure, which is talking with you, and then there's more business. Just a little more business, a little thing that came up this afternoon that really, again, needs really. It doesn't need to be done. No one is expecting anything. It's only $575, but I really want to have it done by start of business tomorrow. So that's a tiny little thing. It's what 7:20, and I don't know that I will sleep tonight, but if I do, it won't be until 5:20. So I've got a long, long time in front of me to get a whole bunch of stuff done. But as soon as I've got the little blocks of real stuff out of the way, well, then tonight I will easily do my first 1,000 words, easily. Keeping in mind something that I have advised you all, if you are writing, well, anything really, but fiction especially, keep a master list. Write it out. Don't trust it to your mind and don't put it on a file on your desktop or on your tablet. Write out your master list so that you can add things to it. In pen, you'll be amazed how much that improves your memory of what you're doing. If you do it out by hand on a sheet that you keep in your writing area, take out a sheet of paper and write down the stuff of your story, characters' names, where they're from, how tall they are, what eye color they are, who knows who, draw them with lines, who knows who and for how long, where are things, where are things. If there's a building, where is it in your city compared to other places? If there's a minor character who's never going to actually appear in the novel, but who other characters are going to mention, well, who is that character? What's that character's name? Don't trust that you will remember those little details in chapter 30. Instead, write them down so that you don't join the endless ranks of novelists who didn't write it down and get those details wrong. Little trade secret here for you. Mainstream novels are not edited past page 100. If you don't believe me, borrow a novel published in 2024 from your library and call up your inner copy editor. Keep a pencil in your hand and call up your inner copy editor. So you're no longer reading the thing for the story or the characters or the plot. You're reading to spot mistakes. Your inner copy editor. You're still turning the pages. You're still reading every word, but you're not reading the book. You are proofing the book with your inner copy editor in mind and a pencil poised over the page. Is there a semicolon here where there should be a period? Is this word not capitalized? Uh, is this character introducing a concept that they introduced 10 pages ago? Just again, as if they hadn't done that because the author forgot about it and no one caught it. When you do that with a modern novel, you will see that after page 100, your pencil is pretty busy. Before then, maybe not. But after that, mistakes will happen. Just plain, simple mistakes. So there are plenty of novelists out there who called the chief of police Abernathy on page 10, and on page 150, he's Abercrombie, and no one catches it because no one's proofing it that far. Don't be one of those authors. Make a master list. Make a master list of who everyone is so you can just glance at it. It will also have the effect, just as a practical side note, it will also have the effect of making your story very real to you. When it's on a screen, you have to go inside it to start moving the furniture around and making people talk. When you're not inside it, it can have an element of unreality. But when you're looking at that every time you sit at your writing area or lay down at your writing area, provided it's within sight of where you work, if you're looking at that every single time, it's going to be very real to you. You're going to start to remember a lot of that stuff. It's going to be very, very useful. That I will certainly start tonight. That master sheet, the very first thing that usually starts with for me is my cast of characters, who they are, what they do, where they're from, maybe a word or two of what they're like. That's the part I usually remember, but I put it anyway. The specific details: who is taller than who is older than who. I'll make that list tonight, but probably I'll do a lot of writing tonight as well. I know the all important thing for me. I know the first scene. I also know the last scene, but I know the first scene, and that's crucial. Um, so I wanted to make a brief Steve stream in which I tell you that whatever was my problem, it has been solved, and I wish that that old friend were here so I could thank him. I don't know how many times he has helped me on this exact point long after he's dead. I don't know how many times he's helped me. That's the thing you have to pay attention to, not the market, not other people, not whether or not you've read something that's similar before. It's all about the execution. It's not about whether or not you're reinventing the wheel. It's about whether or not you are writing the truth. It's simple as that. For him anyway, and for me, you might have a different idea, but for the writing advice that I think is true is that it has to be true for you. And therefore, there can't be any kind of extra people involved. I had extra people involved in all of my doubts. I don't think any of them were you. I don't think that I was worried that about what you would think because we haven't worked out yet how this collective will work in terms of sharing work. We haven't worked that out. Although quite a few of you have shared with me uh, plot synopses, plot thoughts of yours. Here's what I'm thinking: is do you see anything wrong with this? Or what would you add to this? Or what's wrong? What isn't going to work here? Plenty of you sent me stuff like that, and that is wonderful. That I really enjoyed that. You're all welcome to do that. But we haven't really set up a way to share work. I guess a subreddit or a Discord would be a way to do that. I just haven't given that any thought. I haven't given much of this any practical thought because I've been so horribly depressed over the fact that I didn't have a project. Now I do. Now I do have a project. So I wanted to make sure you knew that and that you knew why. Because because eons ago in the Hyde Cottage of the day, when I had writer and editor friends over, I heard the right advice. I heard the right writing advice from me. I guess that different kinds of writing advice can be good for different people. Certainly, I've heard other kinds of writing advice, newsroom writing advice, for instance, that where this friend of mine would not have spent a minute, he would not have set voluntarily one foot inside some of the newsrooms where I've had some of my favorite working days. Uh, so there are different kinds of writing advice, but that room, all that food, all those beagles, just beagles everywhere, and just beagles everywhere, including at the time when he was coming over. Sometimes when a lot of editors were coming over a lot. At the time, I had a lot of beagles. They were everywhere. Four of them were really Steve centric. They would follow me with their eyes wherever I went, whenever I moved. They didn't pay any attention to anybody else. Didn't even look at anybody else. One of them was Steve isometric. Just it was Steve centrism to an extreme level. he was disturbed when other people were here, and or when other people weren't here. I was literally his entire world. He didn't care about other dogs, didn't care about humans, didn't care about cats, didn't care about noises, didn't care about anything. Just me, just me. Uh, but in addition to all of those boys, I also at the time had a beagle who was blind. He'd been born without eyes, just had skin there at his face. He didn't know he had no eyeballs, so had no conception of what sight was. He lived in complete darkness, and that was a bit of an oddity. Guests found it hard to get used to that. They found it hard to get used to that, but it was wonderful to realize this morning on the dog walk with a dog who has no infirmities whatsoever and who's not Steve centric. Freeda very much cares about me. She very much wants to be near me, but she's a well-adjusted dog, perfectly sane dog, ruthlessly sane dog. It was wonderful on that dog walk to reflect back and realize that those conversations are still alive, just barely, but they are still alive, and that advice is still good. So anyway, now that I'm done pontificating, let's move over to the chat and see what's on the minds of all my imaginary booktube friends. Uh, DT says, I finally got here advance notice for a Steve Tree. Yes, I made it a slightly advanced notice uh, this time around. And I'm thinking of doing a longer one, but I don't know that a Steve Stream is going to be possible tomorrow. The dreaded specter of workmen hangs over tomorrow. I don't know how that's going to work. I don't know what videos are going to be possible, much less a Steve Stream. NP Hunt. I think my notification came in a bit early. Steve, no Freeda, no Steve, no Freeda. I'm devastated. No, I made the notification for 7 Boston time. DT, I'm behind on this writing collective shindig. I have my plot worked out. Finally finished my first 1,000 words or so. How are you coordinating? We don't have any coordination. I haven't figured that out yet. Street Medic says it's a good thing that no one can see me because I didn't shave and I'm not wearing pants. Ditto. DT, me too, Steve. We only get out of bed for Steve's stream, you should know. Tolstoy 111, hi folks. We all have a good back and forth. So do we really need Steve? And Jasper Antonelli says, Steve, ooh. Nat Rome says he'll scold us for chatting amongst ourselves when he gets here. And Tolstoy 111 grudgingly allows that I do add something to my own Steve streams. Michael Lombardo, he'll be in a good mood from the look of that comeback video. Oops, sorry, don't call it a comeback. Yes, did any of you see that? My producer was quite happy with his handiwork. Of course, I can't make anything edited or with any kind of fancy stuff like that. But did you see the announcement? If you all didn't, you should. It's a video in today's barrage of videos. Somehow, by some miracle, my producer at Cedarburg Public Library for almost a year, we did Book of the Day on Cedarburg Public Library Radio, one of the only public radio stations for a library that still exists anywhere in the country. And it was a ball. It was a hoot. It was on CPL Radio's YouTube channel. You can find all of those episodes on CPL Radio's YouTube channel, and it was a hoot. And the library seemed to think that it was too much of a time investment, or they couldn't have thought that it wasn't a good time investment because it did really well. I plan on it doing much better. So eventually the plug got pulled on it. And the TikTok world was rife with rumors about my producer and I fighting with each other. Yeah, nothing could be further from the truth. He loved it. I loved it. We didn't want it to end. And now, through some miracle, I don't even want to know the kind of horse trading he had to do on his end. It is back. Not CPL Radio Book of the Day, but Books of the Week. So instead of 10 minutes a day, Monday through Friday, we'll do 30 minutes on Friday every week on three books of interest to talk about. Block number one will be fiction, block number two will be nonfiction, and then block number three will be something else, some sweetmeat at the end. And it's going to be great. I know we can't predict the future, but as I've said many times to my producer, you cannot predict chemistry. It will either be there or it won't. You can't make it happen. You can't script it into being. If you should go over to CPL Radio's YouTube channel and subscribe just for the Friday content. And I'm going to try and talk him into maybe sparing time to chop up some of that Friday content into the shorts that YouTube likes so much. Maybe get some of that out there. Maybe put some of the shorts on other social media. This is not my channel. Can be commercial. It is meant to get eyeballs. I very much want it to eventually get monetized so we can start sending money to the Friends of the Library. I want all of that. It's over on CPL Radio's YouTube channel. It's going to be Books of the Week every Friday. And whether you're interested in the books that we talk about or not, there is something very infectious about two people just having a ball, just laughing their heads off and having a ball. If you don't believe me, call up the old videos that we did. All of the books of the day are on YouTube. Call them up and you tell me that you finished those segments without a smile. You won't. You will smile at every one of them. We have a ball. It's worth subscribing. It's definitely worth putting on your menu for every Friday. That's a comeback video that we're talking about here. Tolstoy 111, he's rereading Blood Meridian and simply cannot rip himself away. Will the judge do next? Yeah, what will dad do? I mean, not dad. Oh, sorry. Well, that was a Freudian slip, wasn't it? Jasper Antonelli, Steve is the model for the judge and Freeda is the kid. Evil Joshua says, "Hey Steve, I was in the middle of a project when the collective started, so I'm with you all in spirit." Nope, nope, no, with you all in spirit. No cheering from the sidelines. Drop your stupid project and join the collective. Procrastination is useless. Join, or it's the end of you. DT, I used to email you about once a month. You in the morning before starting out, but it always felt weird. But chatting in stream feels much more human. Hmm, Nothing, nothing weird about email. Not at all. Or Voxer. Nothing weird about either one of them. As long as people understand, and people are almost always understanding that I might not be able. I'm sometimes on deadline. I might not be able to respond right away. It might take me a bit to respond. And I also get, if you could see what my inbox looks like when I open my laptop in the morning, first thing, if you could see what it looks like, well, I would say you'd cut me some slack, but you cut me slack anyway. There are two basic rules. That's all that'll stop it from feeling weird. One is you can't expect that I'm going to respond right away. I might, if I'm online and I'm looking for a distraction and your message pops up, I might respond immediately. And two, you can't send me a doctoral dissertation. You can if you want. But if you send me a doctoral dissertation, if you send me an email that's 1,000 words long, 2,000 words long, 6,000 words long, and every paragraph has a barrage of questions, and you impatiently tapping your toe, waiting for me to get to every one of them. And if I miss one, if I write you a human reply like, wow, that was a long email, and you write back and say, yes, it was a long email. So how about my questions? No, no, that's not how it works. You do not get to give me work. You do not get to give me work. That's not what I'm asking for. That's not what email is for. That's not what friendship is. No, no. It's those two things, the promptness and also you can't just email me to fact boy me. That just I have no interest in it. I will all with 1,000, 2,000 word emails like that. I will always look at them and say, well, you always say, I'm just not going to respond. But there are earnest questions here. You probably should, but it won't matter anyway because my mind will slot it into do it later. It's this much work, this much writing is work. And if it's work, well, check to see if it has a deadline. Doesn't have a deadline, forget about it. Wait. All the deadlines come first. Deadlines come first. So it's just most of you understand those two things. But anyway, Gola Muad'Dib, hey Steve, how's your writing going? Well, my writing hasn't started yet. Well, the day's writing. I've done a lot of writing today. It's all been on deadline uh, for money. But writing for the collective hasn't started yet, but it's going to start tonight now that I have a project, the Trials of Esther. Now that I know what I want to write, then there's no agonizing. I don't agonize. As a writer, I don't agonize. I needed a logjam to break. I needed to know what I was writing, but now that I know what I'm writing, oh my god, it'll fly out. Connor, uh, moral. Did this friend happen to write a book about moral fiction? Sounds like a pretty boring book. Who could possibly write a book like that? Jasper Antonelli, Melville's books were commercially dead for over 50 years. Right, right. I don't want to be grandiose about the Trials of Esther, but Melville is a perfect example of what I'm talking about here, right? I mean, you can see it in his career. He started out writing the kinds of things I'm talking about, where he's thinking about what people want to read, not what he wants to write. And then he decided to take that advice to consult and map his own moral landscape to tell the truth in his writing. It turned out no one was interested in that, but he couldn't do it. He couldn't not do that once he made that decision. Uh, DT says this writing teacher talking about moral landscapes wasn't John Gardner by any chance. John Gardner? Good Lord, how old do you think I am? Tolstoy 111. For those interested, out today is an Everyman's Library edition of Bulgakov's The White Guard with a new introduction by Orlando Figes. Yes, I saw that. I debated whether or not to request it. It's kind of a volume to have, I think, and it's definitely an Everyman that will be insanely collectible the minute it goes out of print. This printing of theirs, it will go to colleges, it will go to libraries. There'll be a small general public interest in it, even if the New York Review of Books does a piece on it. I think the New York Review of Books is going to do a piece on it in 2 weeks, but even so, 1,000 copies. You'd be blindingly lucky to reach 1,000 copies, and then it'll go out of print. That printing will be allowed to lapse, and those volumes will be expensive. You just know they will be. So I was sort of tempted to request a copy rather than want it and not be able to get it down the line, but I haven't done it yet. Golem Muad'Dib, I'm just writing the story I want to read. Exactly. Exactly. Quaint and Curious Volume says, not John Gardner, Henry Adams. Ooh. Well, in those particular visits down in Washington, I certainly didn't have to worry about running out of wine. The brainy types never want to drink huge amounts of wine. That's always left for me. There are only a couple of exceptions I can think of where I've had true brainy people here who still drank normal amounts of wine. Up Down says hello. Hannah's Books is here, or was. I'm late getting these comments. She might be gone by now. I hear such echoes of your frequent refrain about authors you love, but they have written what they were meant to write. I wish I could remember your exact words. Well, I spew a lot of words on this subject, but I have had an effective reminder of it today, a very personal reminder of it today. I went wrong when I forgot that advice, and I went right the minute I remembered it. Gola Muad'Dib, I know musicians who write the music they want to hear, regardless of how well it does when recording or playing out live. Right. If you're lucky enough to write what you want and it strikes a chord, great, fantastic. Makes you wealthy? Sure, great, fantastic. Usually it doesn't. Usually it doesn't. Because in order to really make it big with money for writing, you have to cultivate an audience. And you cultivate an audience by doing the same thing over and over again. And if you are a genuine person, if you're genuinely learning about the world every day, changing, growing, you're not going to want to keep writing the same thing every day, same thing every single time you're at bat. Let's see here. Connor says, "Wow, Steve, I wish I could have gotten writing advice from Samuel Johnson like you did." Nat Rome, I'm very glad to hear you figured out your project. Yes, the Trials of Esther. Yes, indeed. First scene is the one. Excuse me. First scene is the thing I want to write. I don't always write the first scene first, but the first scene is exactly what I want to do. I know the next 4 scenes after that, and I'm pretty sure of the order I want them to go in. It's just that master list that I really need to do, and I don't need to slow down to do that. I can start writing. The thing is, you start writing, and as you come up with rememberable bits and pieces, add them. to the master list. Just take a pen and write them in. So the thing will be a mess, but you don't have to slow. You don't have to make the master work first. You can accumulate the master list as you're writing. Uh, Street Medic says, before we continue, we need to address the elephant in the room, which is how to refer to ourselves now that we can no longer call ourselves minions. Why can't you call it? Oh, minions. That's right. Well, I don't know. Donna Huguenots? That's not good enough. NP Hunt, seriously, got a notification 30 minutes ago, so too early, but no notification when it actually started. Typical YouTube. Wow, that's weird. That reading guy, I'm here now. The official Stevestream can now begin. DT says, did Edwin Arnold's Gulliver of Mars inspire Burroughs? What did you think of the book? I read the first 2 paragraphs, and his voice had me hooked. I haven't read it in a long time. I remember liking it, but I doubt that it inspired Burroughs. I very much doubt that it did. That reading guy, are you blaming the quality of the editors in mainstream publishing? It would be tough to blame the quality of the editors when what I'm basically implying is that they don't do any work after page 120. So maybe they're good editors. It doesn't matter to me whether they're the best editors in the world if they don't bother with the rest of the book. All I know is that when I pick up a mainstream book, which I had an example there in front of me, I once you learn copy editing, I never actually supported myself by being a copy editor. But once you learn it, you absolutely never forget it. It becomes the most ingrained reflex in the world. When I'm reading a book and I'm totally lost in it, and I encounter something that's wrong, a word that's typed wrong, a space that's wrong, punctuation that's wrong, not picky wrong, but obviously wrong, I immediately stop what I'm doing and grab for the nearest pencil. There are books all over Hyde Cottage, and also, I have to say, all through the Boston Public Library. All I do is just circle. It's just I've got the copywriter's reflex controlled just enough so that all I will do is just circle. I don't actually put the copywriters have a whole lexicon of symbols that they use to indicate what's wrong with the passage that they're pointing to. I don't use those symbols. I just circle the problem and then move on. But I absolutely cannot not do that. And I have noticed that always happens after the first barrage of pages in any book. I'd never do it in the front of a page, in the front of a book, never. NP Hunt, you should try to combine your ideas into a story rather than think of something new. If not, then literally just take 3 stories that stuck in your head from recent reads and combine best elements. Well, that seems kind of Frankenstein-y to me, but I don't have to worry about it. Fortunately, I don't have to worry about it. Oh my God, these 6 days were so awful. But now I don't have to worry about it. Now I have my story. I know exactly what it is. Know exactly what I want to do with it. Ryan says, yay, Steve, congrats on finding some writing light. P.D. James' Original Sin comes to mind as a fantastic story set in the publishing world. The temp finds all the bodies. I'm very fond of Original Sin, very much so. But this isn't. There's no murder. There's a death, but there's no murder. Street Medic. When I wrote my book, I frequently wake up in the middle of the night to say to myself, "Why did I write that sentence like that?" And I couldn't get back to sleep until I got up and rewrote it. Oh my! Well, have you tried not sleeping? I know that's not going to work. That reading guide, true for you, Steve. You are beginning to sound like a self-help book. I know. That's why if you rewind this Stevestream to the beginning and play it, you will hear me groaning at my own words, trying to walk around all the self-help landmines. There's almost no way to talk about it. The way my friend used to talk about fiction, there's almost no way to talk about it that doesn't get you into self-help territory. And I understand that's mockable because that's all a grift. Nevertheless, there are elements involved here. Oh God, any wording that he used to use sounds so evangelical. But if you are writing, you are, at least for that time, a storyteller. And a storyteller who's lying to you, I mean, think about it for a minute. If you're not familiar with creativity at all, a cynic might say, "Oh, all storytellers are lying. That's what they do. They're professional liars." No, no, that's not true. You don't have to be a creative person. You just have to be a reader to know that. A storyteller who is lying to you is worse than useless. There aren't words for them, for what that is. And yet, when we think up stories, there are huge voices in our minds saying all kinds of different ways to lie. in our story, which we've made up out of whole cloth. That doesn't make it false. Anyway, sorry, I'm not helping any here. Ryan, I'm amazed you think of a story's title before writing a scene. I've got 80K words, crime fiction set in DC, and still have no title. I can't do it any other way. I can't. I know. I've known so many writers who do. Who say I knew one writer who used to just identify his books, the book in progress, by the color of the notebook he was using. He'd say the blue book. I got to work on the blue book this afternoon, or I'd meet you for tennis. But I have to work on the blue book. I can't imagine that, and I don't think it's healthy. I really don't. It's a silly little detail, but I really think it helps to have a title, even if it's just a working title. To have a title, I guarantee you, Ryan, that somewhere in the words that you have written, probably in the first 10 words, but certainly in the first 100, is an excellent working title. And somewhere in the first, you say you have 80K words, let's say 5K, somewhere in the first 5,000 words is not only a pretty good working title, but the best actual title for the finished book. I guarantee it. I've never known that not to be true. I've found that in 100 different books for 100 different writers. I know that's true. But I have to have one. Absolutely, I do. NP Hunt, I obviously know you don't need advice from someone who wrote a mediocre book over 3 years ago, but I still recognize good advice from bad. I honestly really want to read 1515, Troy War, and Odd Dog. Well, Odd Dog hasn't been written. 1515, my long novel. I wanted to see what it's like to write a 1,000-page book. And Troy War have both been written. I don't know what to call Troy War. It's not a long novel, but I don't know what to call it. It's extremely violent. And I think also beautiful. It has the two passages of prose, fiction prose, that I think even now, after all this time, are still the most beautiful things I've ever done. The only things that actually are beautiful. My account of the death of Hector is, I think, the single best thing I've ever written in fiction. But it's also violent, very, very violent. Whereas 1515 is really good and has lots and lots of humor in it, lots and lots of gross body humor in it. That reading, guys. See, even the first time the chat has jumped. Let's go and find you. It was that reading guy. Uh, 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 okay, sorry. We're gonna go back and find. I don't want to miss anybody. I don't want to. I don't want to be one of those streamers who just ignores the comments or misses a whole bunch of them. So we're gonna go back to that reading. See, even you needed a mental health break before you could begin writing. Oh, please tell me that's not true. I can't spend my whole life mocking the whole concept, this 21st century complete fetishization of mental health. I can't spend all this time pricelessly riffing on such a dumb idea, only to need it myself. No, I don't know what it was, but it can't have been that. I don't know. I come from a generation that didn't have mental health. No, it can't be that, whatever it is. DT, based on your last stream, what are the telltale signs that a critic has not read the book at all or skimmed it? I've started reading reviews and criticism occasionally. I want to be a judgy bitch. One dead giveaway for a reviewer is if they actually mention a particular spot in the book. That's a dead giveaway. Almost always true. Not in my case. I have a lot more time for reading than most people do. But a critic, a mainstream critic, like in the Journal or the Post, if they say, "I was reading so and so's book, and right around page 110, the interest just drops off," I can almost unconditionally guarantee they only read to page 110, and then their interest dropped off because that's when their mistress showed up or something like that. That's one way. And also, if they're talking about the characters meeting at the beginning of a novel, let's say, and their prose is very specific. It's very jagged and very spiky and very spot on, very microscopic. And then all of a sudden it gets gauzy and fuzzy. Well, the reason for that is either going to be one, that they were conscious about spoilers, but most reviewers don't care about that as much as you think they do. Or two, after page 30, they just started doing this. So they can't risk plunking down to specifics or they'll get something wrong. Uh, Jasper Antonelli, my mom had a cat who would stare at her for hours all day and get as close as he could. That's the kind of thing I was talking about. I've had dogs over the years, beagles. I've had beagles over the years who were like that. I've had some that, you know, you're the guy with the food. And occasionally if it's cold, I'll cozy up to you because I have a high body temperature. I'm very warm on a cold night. And then I had some my normal boys who loved me. This is great. Oh, I'm so happy to see you. This is wonderful. I'll cuddle against you. Can't wait to go on walks with you. And then I had some where I was the axis of the whole world. They could not. They had to watch me at all times, be with me at all times. And then one in particular who I was literally his whole world. Even his siblings, even his brothers, he didn't care. It was just me. But most of them are normal. I would say the Frida is a little bit on the distant end. I, I I embarrass her when I want to smooch with her. Usually she'll put up with it and just go heavy sighing. It's only when she's really tired or feeling sick. These last few days, she's been feeling a little under the weather that she gets a little cuddly. And I imagine that as she gets older, that's going to get more pronounced. Jared Henderson is here. I have done nothing for the collective. I don't know if I'm even part of it, but I wish you'd reconsider Discord. It's very good for this sort of thing. Well, why would you wish me to reconsider Discord if you're ignoring the whole thing? You should be writing. What do you mean, done nothing for the collective? Didn't you have 2 books on the go? You have 2 books on the go, and they're intensely commercial, for Pete's sake. I mean, not they are commercial, but they have commercial potential, huge amounts. You could be rolling in the dough and keeping me in the style to which I'm accustomed. Uh, that Quaint and Curious Volumes, is Poetry Thursday returning, or are you hoping we'll all forget about it so you won't have to read Howl in its entirety? I should revive Poetry Thursday. We wouldn't be getting to the bad stuff right away. We are on the doorstep of the Harlem Renaissance. There's a lot of really good stuff. The baby is fighting with the couch, as you can see. Oh goodness, baby, what are you doing? Oh my God, Frida, what are you doing, baby? What are you doing? That's not moving for you at all, is it? Huh? Oh, you're a good girl. Oh, Frida, that's not going to work, little girl. It's not moving at all. You want me to get this out of the way? Is that it? Huh? Oh my God. I can't go back to streaming, little girl, because you're bouncing the computer when you do this. Oh, oh, oh no. Oh, baby, what are you doing? Frida, what are you doing, baby? Huh? What are you doing? Oh. That's an ongoing psychodrama. uh, uh, I should revive Poetry Thursday. I should do that. DT, what is it in most romance books that makes them less likely to be trash than the more men's focused genre? I'm not sure that I understand that question. They're not less likely to be trash. There's trash all over. There's trash everywhere. uh, I think I think if there's something that makes them less likely to be trash, uh, it's the things they champion or the kinds of stories that they want to tell. Men's adventure fiction is sadomasochistic. It's incredibly sexist. It's nihilistic. It's violence for violence sake. It ultimately at the end of the game, it's champion a kind of punch your neighbor and take his wallet cynicism. They might say the authors might say that they're not doing that, and the books might say that they're not doing that, but that's clearly the idiom that's being enforced there. Whereas in romance novels, the thing that the book is servicing is a happy ending. It's love. Maybe that might be the. I'm not sure that I understand the question. Or you follow up. Is it that they focus on realistic characters and realistic stories? No, there's nothing realistic in either romance or men's adventure. Jasper Antonelli, Steve, did you ever lift weights or was it always just kendo? I lifted weights when in Rome. Lift weights with Rome when I had young weightlifters wearing skin tight tank tops who wanted to go over to the gym and lift weights. I went and lifted weights with them. Absolutely. NP Hunt, but I never did it systematically. I never did it seriously at all. NP Hunt, seriously, couldn't be happier to hear that you're returning to CPL. Whoever pulled the plug originally was clearly a moron. We don't want to cast any aspersions lest the plug be pulled again. I think it was manifestly a wrong decision to pull the plug on CPL Radio Book of the Day. I think that was manifestly a wrong decision. We were doubling our subscriber count every month. We were getting close to being able to monetize and bring in money for the library system. We generated across the transom foot traffic of patrons who watched the show and then came into the library. They might not find the book we were talking about, but they never left empty-handed. It was good for the CPL library. It was good for the Cedarburg Public Library. That channel was good for the library. We didn't do anything inappropriate. We did a lot of stuff that was dad humor and in poor taste, but we never did anything that was inappropriate. And it was starting to get attention elsewhere. In addition to all of the good that it was doing in Cedarburg, it was also starting to get the attention elsewhere, including one old friend of mine who was increasingly happy with CPL radio and who sent me a message saying, never in a million years would I have thought that somebody could get you back on air. He doesn't consider YouTube. These people don't consider YouTube to be real at all. They don't consider it to be on the air. But the minute you say radio, well, then it was. This old friend said, I never thought anyone would ever get you back on the air. Keep doing this. But it went away anyway, and now it's back. Slightly different format, maybe more sustainable. Certainly more sustainable for my producer, who, keep in mind, has to work all day long. But anyway, up, down. Very glad to see the show back. I loved watching them. Those old videos are worth rewatching. They are. I don't say that about my own videos at all. But the CBL Radio's YouTube channel, go to their YouTube channel, find all the Book of the Day episodes that we have. I guarantee you will laugh. You might not be interested in the books that we're talking about, but there, as many people have pointed out, you've all pointed it out, there's something very therapeutic, irresistible about watching people crack each other up. That just makes your day. That happened in almost every episode of Book of the Day. Occasionally we did serious subjects. We did a show about Waco. Occasionally we did serious subjects, but usually it was fun. So I'm very glad that it's back. No matter what kind of a life you have, you need that injection every once in a while. Well, we're here to inject you every Friday. Anyway, that reading guy. Oh no, Steve has started a side hustle. Hell has frozen over. No. I started this. We started this over a year ago. I am a guest on CPL Radio. I am their book reviewer at large. So it's a perfect combination. It's the guy who's at the library. He's the librarian. He's the one talking to the patrons. He's the one checking out the books. He's the one answering the questions, and a critic talking about books, not just the books that the library has access to, although I'd kind of like to keep it to that. At least a chance of it. Anyway, quaint and curious volumes. Based on the original run of the Book of the Day, this new show is going to be great. It's half an hour on Fridays. Fiction, nonfiction, and whatever. A sweetmeat to end the half hour. Matt Sheridan, good evening, peeps. Howdy, Stephen Bean, taking a break from class reading. I hope the class reading isn't too painful. And Hunt, for Steve to read all of Howl, he'd have to have a cesspit of a week. It definitely wouldn't be balanced or respectful as his reading of the Bible. Well, thank you for the backhanded compliment about my reading of the Bible. I don't know that I could read Howl. If I read all of Howl, or even a lot of it, I don't know that I could resist the temptation to read it in the author's voice. I don't usually do voices anywhere on my channel, but I don't know that I could resist the temptation. I did for Poetry Thursday, week after week. I resisted the temptation, but for Howl, I don't know that I could. That reading guy, is the collective a Steve writing cult? Yes. Matt Sheridan, have you watched Malcolm Geit's YouTube channel? That name's not ringing a bell. Anti-Gaia, Steve, we got some good news out of the DC circuit. Are you still as pessimistic as you were a month or so ago? Yes. Yes, I am. The DC circuit, yes, Anti-Gaia is referring here to the DC circuit, saying this claim that Donald Trump's claim that a president has absolute immunity from the law, that he could kill someone and it's not illegal unless he's convicted in the Senate in an impeachment trial, is nonsense. The circuit court said that is nonsense. That is self-evident nonsense. It was a unanimous decision. I There's no way that Trump's people are going to leave it alone. They're going to want there's a thing that you can call for with the circuit court where you have the whole circuit court weigh in, en banc review, where you have all the judges weigh in instead of just three. That's the first thing that he'll do. It's within his legal team's right. That will happen. I would be willing to bet that that will also be unanimous against, but then he'll appeal it to the Supreme Court. And the pundits right now are saying that the court won't take the case. You can appeal something to the Supreme Court, but if they don't take it, if they don't put it on their docket, then they're not going to hear it. And there is no constitutional issue at law here. There is no constitutional issue in question. Obviously, presidents do not have complete immunity from the law. Of course, they are not kings. Of course, they aren't. That this shouldn't have gone anywhere. But the Supreme Court, that certainly doesn't need to be decided. That is not an open question of law. Of course, that no one has that authority in the United States. So they don't have to take the case. But if they do, I would like to think that it will all go well, but I have seen how venal Trump creatures are, and this is a Trump court. The circuit court made the decision that they did because if they hadn't made that decision, if they decided the other way, if they'd said 3-0, yeah, we're convinced the president does have this kind of authority, then Joe Biden could have them all killed. He could have all three of them executed. And they must know that, and a full court review, circuit court review, will obviously know the same thing. It's one thing to say, that Meryl Steveotter over in East Oak is above the law, but if you say that the man who controls the armies is above the law, well, your life isn't worth a plugged nickel, as we say on June on the Range. Uh, Katie Books, where are my beans? You seem rather obsessed, don't you? Andy Guy, hello to Freeda as well. Yes, Freeda's right here. She's finally settled down. DT, how do you manage emails with us? Do you keep them or just delete them after a while? Why would anybody keep an email? Why would anybody do that? The minute there's a glitch at Google, I will lose all these things anyway. Do you have any idea how much space they would take up? If you could see what my inbox looks like when I open the laptop first thing in the morning. No, I don't keep emails. No, I don't. I don't. I answer them to the best of my ability as fast as I can, but I don't keep them. Do you? Uh, J. Scott Phillips, we've been under a barrage of rain all afternoon today. Yes, this storm just will not quit on the West Coast. And I can hear it pounding on the road above me. As soon as you mentioned book of the week, the rain stopped like someone turned off a valve. Oh, you all know, I don't sing the praises of my own channel at all. I have said for years that I don't understand why anyone even watches my channel. I don't do that. But this is magic. Takes a little getting used to. It's not just me, but it is chemistry. And I have done this sort of thing a lot. And so has my producer. We have both done this a lot. I'm sure that if he were in this chat, he would agree with me that chemistry is rare. You can't fake it and you can't buy it. You either have it or you don't. I'm sure that when he approached me originally years ago, his heart might have been in his throat, wondering, well, what if this is terrible? What if I make this offer and it's not only there's no chemistry, but it's bad? I still have to do it, at least a little. That isn't what either one of us found. And even if you don't like the dad jokes, even if you're not interested in the books that we pick, you're going to see the chemistry immediately. Go and subscribe is what I'm saying. Go to Cedarburg Public Library Radio's YouTube channel and subscribe. And then do yourself a favor this week and just binge watch all of those old Book of the Weeks. You will love them. You will love them. I never say that about my own stuff, but this isn't my own stuff. But anyway, Ryan says, regarding email, I search your channel about a novel, and if nothing comes up, send an email. You've always been good about responding. Thank you. Well, yeah, but it doesn't have to just be, oh, can you be a custodian of your own channel? You can email me about anything. Happy to do it. As long as you people give me a small amount of understanding that you're not expecting a reply at length immediately, then we're golden. And most 99% do. Every once in a while, about once a week, I get a 5,000 word long email. Full of research questions that a person could easily go to Google and get the answer to. But that's very rare. Uh, NB Hunt says CPL T-shirts coming soon. CPL LOL. C Bean Library. Ruck of the month. Once we're monetized, once we're big, merch is certainly possible. A whole bunch of stuff is possible, and the money goes to a good cause. The money will go to the Friends of the Cedarburg Public Library, and the friends of your library always need money. They are out there evangelizing for your library. They're doing the work that the library doesn't have the budget to do. Anyway, Steve Bronstein. Hi, Steve. I'm sure you're of two minds about this, but I'd be curious to know what you made of Elise Stefanik's questioning of the university presidents and the fallout from the whole fiasco. It, two minds indeed. Oh my God, two minds indeed. I, you're right. You're absolutely right. I do have two minds on the subject. In this case, the minds are not equally 50-50 because I want Elise Stefanik yeeted into the heart of the sun. So she could take the microphone as well of the Senate and start praising the Golden Age Superboy. I would still want her yeeted into the heart of the sun. So it doesn't really matter if the two halves are not the same. Matt Sheridan says, "Wait, hold the phone. The CBL radio collab is back." Yes, it is. You didn't see the epic video that my producer made today on my channel? We put it on my channel so that people would see it. Yeah, we did a teaser trailer. Believe it or not, we did a teaser trailer, and it's wonderful. And the show is coming back. It will be on Fridays. It's no longer Book of the Day. It's CPL Radio Book of the Week, Books of the Week, where we do 3 books on Friday. So you'll be able to end your week with a big smile on your face. Uh, that reading guide, growing every day. Are you saying Louis L'Amour never grew because he wrote the same thing every time he was up to bat? Well, but I don't agree with that. I don't completely agree with that. I'm no Mark Richardson, but I've studied this man's work. And the books with Louis L'Amour, you get a book and another book and then another book and then another book. And some of the books are just reworkings of older stuff that he's done, that he did under another name, he did with a different character. Some of the stuff is like that. And in between those are books that he is actually working on. And those do change. They are very much of a formula, but they are not identical. You can definitely tell those islands where Louis L'Amour is not repurposing old work, when he's not doing hack work for a tight deadline, when it's the real book of that year. Often it was a Sackett book, but not always. Certainly The Walking Drum is a perfect example of that. Those books do show change. They're still well within parameters. I think he loved his genre, but they're not static. So I don't say that they're the same, is what I'm saying. NP Hunt, I started writing a novel, then started thinking about backstory and started writing that into it. I killed the project for no apparent reason. I know how it's all supposed to go, but I feel lost. Yeah, you just have to stop with the backfilling. Just, you just have to pretend that it doesn't exist. Write the next scene. Keep the microscope burrowed down and write the next scene and enjoy the hell out of writing the next scene and worry about the bigger picture down the line. Ryan says, Steve, do you have a favorite David Mitchell book? I think you said The Thousand Autumns of Jake. No, The Bone Clocks is my favorite by far. I love them all. He's a visionary in the vein of Helen DeWitt. That reading guide, do you circle your Kindle too when you find an obvious error? I highlight it. I can't not. The copy editor instinct is too great. I can't not. I can't just let it go. If it's on the Kindle, I highlight it. If it's in a book, I circle it in pencil. Street Medic says, I put whiteout on my Kindle. It doesn't work. J. Scott Phillips, in getting used to writing for your collective, how long should it reasonably take to write those 1,000 words each day? Well, it depends on each person, but usually I found that the reason why it takes any longer than, say, half an hour is because people are editing while they write. You should not edit while you write at all. You should not edit while you write at all. Pause for a fraction of a second to think of the right way to phrase something. You're going to change it anyway. It might seem right at the moment, but you're going to change it anyway in the rewrite. But 30 minutes, 40 minutes, no more than that. Matt Sheridan says, I'm still tossing around for my thesis. I was thinking about Crime and Punishment. I'm a little intimidated by this whole thesis business. Yeah, I never found thesis writing to be all that intimidating. I guess that's why I wrote so many for so many people. Nat Rome, I don't mind the self-help talk. I think it's a lot more interesting than a lot of how to write things that sell videos on YouTube. I know they're all over YouTube. They're all over what used to be AuthorTube. AuthorTube is largely turned into that. It's largely turned into GrifterTube. It's really, 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 really bad. But nevertheless, I mean, I talk about writing like a tailor talks about cloth cutting. There's nothing mystical about it. You're in complete control of it. This paragraph could probably be pulled out and put somewhere else. This line, rip it out, rework it, and put it somewhere else. This is all under your control. There's nothing mystical about it. But nevertheless, when you're writing something, you are involved. You're involved in a kind of activity that exists nowhere else. Just nowhere else. It is extremely personal. It should be true. Anyway, Hannah's book, still here, still cheering for your project, and now also laughing at Street Medic's whiteout comment. Yes, Street Medic says, wasn't it Picasso who said art is a lie that reveals the truth, or something like that? Well, he'd have to be good to be worth listening to on the subject. A whole bunch of lines, not a name, just a whole bunch of lines. Chat jumped, but that's going to be easy to find, isn't it? It's just a whole string of lines. Can you rattle off an impromptu Southern Gothic starter kit? Now, that reading guy, I used to have a collection of good titles for stories, but I thought that was a bad habit and stopped myself. Now I struggle with coming up with titles. It's the easiest thing in the world to me. It comes to me usually in the first few seconds of actually concretely thinking about what I'm writing, which I wasn't doing for the last 6 days. I wasn't doing that. Now that the minute that I realized that publishing house idea is the thing I want, the title came to me. Nat Rome, I agree that it helps to have a title. It really helps me to center what the project is about. If I make it to the end of the short story without a title, it usually turns out badly. I just think if it has a working title, then it is something in your mind, as opposed to an amorphous collection of possibilities, which doesn't seem like a thing that would get you out of bed to write. Although I've known authors who did that. Randy Ray says, oh no, I'm late. Well, better late than never. Andy Guy, I had a basic idea of a novel when I used to write as a teen about a Russian immigrant in the early 20th century, sort of a rise and fall story interlaced with his reflections on the Red Famine. That kind of a novel used to be big, of course. Now your immigrant would have to be a take charge girl boss who don't need no man. But I'm sure you could do that. DT, what do you think of Roald Dahl as a children's story writer? What about him as a short story writer? I've never liked him in either role. I know that puts me in the minority. I know he's extremely beloved, but he's never done anything for me. Siva Bronstein says, I was hate watching Michael Savage's live stream the other day in which he was cooking and spewing his racist garbage. I commented that just overcooked regarding his chicken dinner, so he blocked me. Well, he didn't do it. Flunkies block. I'm sure that he doesn't look at his comments, but I have seen videos, clips of stuff that he does, and I honestly don't know why anyone would watch it. I mean, we all go home for Thanksgiving anyway, and have to endure that one incredibly awkward, horrible piece of crap relative. Why would you go out of your way to listen to that person? I don't get it. Matt Sheridan, random thought. That would be great if you did another interview with that Bigfoot guy. That video was wildly entertaining and interesting. Why, thank you. I don't know that I would do another interview with him, not because I had a blast. That was a fun interview. But because there's so many other Bigfoot researchers to talk to. So many others of them. Of course, the gold standard, the thing that I would really like would be to talk to Dr. Jeff Meldrum. That would be great. I don't know. I've never approached it, never even thought about it. Never even thought about how to do it. But I would love it. If he would give me 40 minutes, I would love it. I'd just go over the basics. It'd be something he could do in his sleep. I would not be challenging him at all. I would just go over the basics. I want people to hear the basics from someone who obviously isn't nuts. Somebody who actually thinks about what he's doing and is a professional in the field. But there's so many others too. So many people out there. I mean, Seth Breedlove, he's way too busy to do an interview with some weird book review guy, but I'd love to do it. Oh my God, his name's gone right out of my head. He's the best of them all. And his name's gone right out of my head. Well, it doesn't matter because they're a whole bunch. They're a whole bunch of researches I'd love to do. Instead of going back to that, just to the North American Bigfoot Center. Anti-Gaia says, started but inevitably gave up on it, and since then my prose writing muscle has atrophied. No, it hasn't. No, it hasn't. I don't believe that. It might be in really bad shape, but I doubt that it's atrophied. You could do it. You could get it back into shape. You just know from having muscles that are in terrible shape. You know it's that first 2 months that are going to be hell. Uh, that reading guy. Why does Deb and Sam Sachs get to read your fiction, but you won't show us imaginary booktube friends? Well, Deb is not interested in reading my fiction. She's only read a bit of it here and there. I'm not sure all that sure that Sam's all that interested in it either. No, it's just I tend not to share my fiction at all. I've shared more fiction with my surly houseboy, I think, than I have with anybody. Uh, Connor says you can't just talk about Troy War like it's Homer and Shakespeare combined and not show us. I wasn't talking about it that way. I was saying it's the best thing I've written. That isn't Homer or Shakespeare combined, not at all. I think that a couple of scenes in Troy War uh, are really good. In terms of my own writing, I wasn't saying that it was great. Matt Sheridan says Sarah Michael Savage is one of the most laughably thin-skinned people ever. He blocked me as well. That's interesting. Uh, let's see here. That reading guy says talking about telling the truth in your writing. How can reviewers live with themselves when they write a review of a book they never finished or never actually read? That's deceiving your audience. I don't know the answer to that question. Perpetrators have been in this room and shared my wine. I don't know the answer to that question. I think in the back of their mind, they're thinking, I have done this so many times, and so much of this stuff is so much the same and so bad that I'm not really deceiving my audience if I just wing it. It's not really that important. Fortunately, the reviewers who think that way and act that way are a dying breed, believe it or not. Not because virtue has suddenly run rampant, but because those reviewers were mostly daily book critics for book pages in newspapers, and those positions are disappearing. The old school book bloggers from 15 years ago that were out there, they were religious against doing such things. They were wonderful readers. And the reviewers who do most of most of the published book reviewing now do it for venues where there's a longer deadline, there's a larger space, so there's no churn. There's not really any churn. If you're writing a piece every other month or every 4 months for the London Review of Books, you can read every word. You can read every word the author's ever written, not just the new book, but all the old ones. It's very, very rare to have a regular newspaper critic who is actually conscientiously reading everything and still churning out first-rate work. Sam Sachs would be a perfect example of a very, very rare breed now. Uh, Matt Sheridan says, I was also thinking that Pope Patrick might be an interesting curveball for a thesis. Well, you couldn't do anything on Pope Patrick alone, right? That would be a pretty thin thesis, wouldn't it? But the papacy in modern fiction is a great idea. A great idea. Again, I say you could email me. I think I've told you this a number of times specifically. I'm blunting things here. I'm being a little euphemistic, but still, I'm trusting that you can read between the lines when I say I can be an enormous amount of actual, real world, pragmatic help on this subject. There's nothing unethical about seeking that help instead of dropping comments once in a while. Like, for instance, you're too young to remember probably, but there was a huge bestseller probably 50 years ago, 40 years ago. Huge bestseller. It sold like crazy in hardcover and then like triple that amount in paperback. About a character who is a warrior. He has he has 3 stages in his life, and the final stage is him being Pope. Well, that could be part of a thesis that includes Pope Patrick. You could also include Earthly Powers by Anthony Burgess, his greatest book, in which one of the two main characters becomes Pope. And the way he gets there, the things that he does in that story, amazing stuff. Anyway, anyway here, you could also spread it to multimedia. You could, for instance, include the two popes. The performance with Anthony Hopkins is Pope Benedict. I can't remember the guy who plays the present pope. I can't remember his name. Oh my god, it's gone right out of my head. He's the husband and the wife with Glenn Close. He just played Prince Philip on The Crown. His name's gone right out of my head. But anyway, it doesn't matter. You can include that as well, or even the young Pope with what's his name, Jude Law. That's such a horrible show. But you wouldn't be assessing its quality. You'd be asking questions about how it portrays the papacy. Uh, but anyway, Street Medic says, "What do you think of Dreyer's English? I was underwhelmed myself. So was I. So was I. There's only so far you can go in gently chiding prescriptive grammar guides before you become one. Quaint and Curious Volumes, the Blue Book. Now we know that Steve has also friends with either Wittgenstein or Doris Lessing character. No, no. Although this chat is entirely full of ardent readers, I'm fairly certain that some of you will be familiar with the book that the Blue Book became. Matt Sheridan says, Bean is ready for her close up, Mr. DeVille. NP Hunt says, I absolutely hate the current mental health situation and zeitgeist. As someone who's genuinely struggled with it, I find it condescending and horribly demeaning that everything is mental illness now. That's the first thing I think about. The first thing I think about here is not me, which is a little strange. Instead, the first thing I think about are the people who actually do have mental health issues that they struggle with. When every single vape head kid in college is saying, yeah, I didn't go to class or dress or do anything nice for anybody today because I needed a mental health day. It's just bandied around everywhere now. When there's nothing wrong with their mental health. To say that we all have mental health issues is to say that we all have cancer. It's to say that we all have an illness. No, that undercuts and drastically waters down, it vitiates the people who actually do have these troubles. Anyway, that probably wasn't put well. uh, Tolstoy 111 says, is Goldsmith's The Vicar of Wakefield as dull as it sounds? No, but you have to be in the mood for it. You have to be in the mood for it. If you're up for a Goldsmith that is wonderful, then read the bestseller by Olivia Goldsmith. It's terrific. Oh my God. You won't want to stop reading. Uh, DT says, how do you feel about pseudonyms? Is it authentic? I want to publish. Publish under a pseudonym? I am scandalized to my very bones. You are not telling me that some people write under pseudonyms? Are you? I find this too shocking to even talk about. Mark says, in the last stream, you commended the French for their hospitality. Do you find the French Canadians equally hospitable? Is that some sort of joke? No. No. That gets dumped overboard on the way over. No. Mark says, half my family is from Quebec. We have a long storied history of engaging in fisticuffs with the Irish on the streets of Canada and New England. Right. So even if the French Canadians are hospitable to other people, I'm the wrong person to ask about French Canadians. That reading guy says Micah Cummins, Grix, and Joe Spivey are Steve's new young crew of reading weightlifters. Well, well, none of them are near me. First of all, they would be great if they were. Oh my God, we would hang out all the time if they were. They would have a say in the matter. Young men don't have a say in the matter. I want to hang out with them, but I mean, Grix is in good shape because he's a physical guy. He's out hiking and biking and scuba diving with sharks and whatnot. And I imagine that Micah goes, in for weightlifting now and again. I doubt very much that Joe Spivey does. All three of them together. The point I'm trying to make is that all three of them together don't amount to one latissimus dorsi of one of my old weightlifting crew of teenagers. They were seriously into it. They did the pre. They watched all the guys on YouTube. They talked about it all the time. They all dreamed of having their own YouTube channel with, you know, copyright free bad rap music and the slow cuts and whatnot. They all dreamed about it. They're all gone now. I don't hang out with them anymore. COVID ended that. But the the Micah and Grix and Joe Spivey would have to be the YouTube equivalent of that, which is not quite the same. Uh, Street Medic says, which Wittgenstein, the Tractatus or the Investigations? Tyler, back on the air. So Steve was a radio star before he was a professional book critic, and I suppose this was after his time as a professional jockey. Not a radio star, and it's still about books. I didn't think it would ever happen again, at all. And my old friend said that he said, I never dreamed that anyone would ever be able to get you back on air again. And I wanted to say to him, well, there's also a video component. I made 6,000 videos, but it wouldn't matter. He literally wouldn't understand what I was saying. Nobody looks at YouTube. But to put it mildly, I didn't think it would happen either because I'm not good at any. I can't work a soundboard. I can't do any kind of mixing or anything like that. I have to be the in studio talent. I have to be the talent. I have to be the hairdo. And in order to do that, I need somebody to play against. And that is, like I said, that you cannot make that happen, not effectively. You can do it, but it'll be dead. You'll hate it unless it works. And if for you can't make it work, it has to just work on its own. Matt Sheridan, what makes the CPL work so well is that you and your producer have genuine chemistry, and that makes it work. Yes, I remember uh, when we tried it, we weren't sure what was going to happen. You can't be sure. You don't have to be, break up and have be enemies with the person, but it can be that after one show, two shows, you're thinking, I don't really want to do this. I will, but I don't want to do this. And if you look around on YouTube, the news commentary shows, some of the team ups about comics or even books, whole bunch of other subjects, it won't take you long to see a team up where there isn't any chemistry because they don't like it. There's no chemistry and they can't stop. So it's just two people in a room. Yeah, the chemistry is the thing. It's the reason to do it, even if you're not interested in the books. Steve Bronstein says, Matt Sheridan, that's funny, small world. Dan Sarkozy says, hi, Steve. And did you hear about Jennifer Brooks? Yes, I did. I heard about Jennifer Brooks right after it happened. I can't really say that I'm still reeling about it, but it is weird. It is weird. It's inevitable, right? With this community, we have a community here on BookTube. We have a community, a whole bunch of different. This is not the cookie cutter plastic 30-year-olds yelling about YA that it was 15 years ago. We are now a wild, multifaceted community where genuine affections grow, and that means it mirrors real life. And in real life, you don't know. You don't know when somebody's going to be here one day and gone the next, or hit hardship. Right? Sean Standfast had to leave his apartment with millions of books and no ability to move himself. Long COVID, so he could barely take 10 steps without needing to sit down and catch his breath. The real world interposed in his life, and or sickness or estrangement or death. It's the weird obverse of all the fun stuff is that you're going to get that. I'm not even mentioning Fit to Be Read, which is I'm not even all of life is going to intrude into this community. This community is going to show all of life. That's what makes it different from TV. To me, that's what makes it so incalculably special. Uh, let's see here. Joshua Crabo says, "Hey Steve, just joined the stream after watching the CPL trailer. I'm so excited. Yeah, Friday we're gonna have a heck of a show on Friday. We're gonna have a heck of a show. I mean, my producer and I are both uh, old hands and very vaudevillian. So this is not going to be NPR, with quiet, thoughtful voices as lilac petals fall on the road to Sarajevo. No, this isn't going to be that at all. And he and I have a lot of the same dictums in common. And one of my dictums is that if you're wanting to make a good impression when you're relaunching something, leave people with a smile on their face. This Friday is going to do that. Trust me. NP Hunt says, speaking of kendo, did you ever meet Kendo Nagasaki or any of the original British wrestlers? I infer from previous videos that you were in the UK for the World of Sport days when it was ubiquitous. I did not. Geo Craftsman, I'm glad you indulged the urge to do Henry Baskerville's voice without his Baskervilles. Lord knows Conan Doyle makes it impossible not to. Yeah, he makes him kind of a parody of an American. Jasper Antonelli, Howl reminds me of The Simpsons. Radiant, cool, crazy nightmare, Sand, New Jersey, nowhere. NP Hunt certainly didn't mean the Bible reading comment to be backhanded. Rather, I'd say my praise for those readings is full throated. Oh, thank you. Steve Bronstein, Steve, are you holding steady with the conviction that Biden will be the best competitor to Trump? Uh, Biden is the president with the incumbency of the presidency. Yielding that will yield the election to Trump, no matter what pollsters say. I want to stress here, though, that this is not about beating Trump at the polls. Trump is not interested in the election. He is not interested in votes. He does not believe in the legitimacy of the democratic process. Every election he's ever been in, he says, was rigged, even the one he won. He's not interested in the election. All he's interested in is being in the election. All he's interested in is getting to election day as a candidate. After that, he has plans that don't have anything to do with what the vote is. And it would be crazy, simply flat out insane for this country to let him get there. That's all he wants. This isn't a question about who wins in a couple of precincts in Michigan. Anyway, Matt Sheridan, did you see Ben Shapiro's rap song? His grift knows no end. I saw it, indeed. NP Hunt, Jeff Messerman is your perfect foil. I agree. J. Scott Phillips, speaking of our barrage of rain, perhaps it's time for a blob watch. Oh, good idea. Let's take a look and see. Still going to be completely smooth sailing for me. New England just is not getting any weather anytime soon. But the rest of the country, I seem to remember. Let's take a look and see. We'll give it a minute for the satellites to feed all this information in here. Only a minute though, because we live in Star Trek. Okay, see what I mean? Nothing for New England at all. Just nothing at all. Got this little thing up here at the Great Lakes, and then this massive mess over here in the West. But nothing that's going to bother New England at all. Not at all. So I got nothing. I got nothing for it. It's completely clear weather. Blue skies, not a hint of any kind of moisture. Jasper Antonelli found the Oxford Book of Humorous Prose conducted by Frank Muir today. The library was giving it away. Good Lord, that's a heck of a volume. Matt Sheridan, CPL lunchbox, CPL t-shirt, CPL the flamethrower. Street Medic, the only email I have is for work. Any personal emails go to my wife's. The only problem is I can't make an OnlyFans account, which I'm sure would be worth millions. Since DT says, since you praise the Enlightenment, do you like any of the Enlightenment philosophers? Anyone you think would take them out from the classical, anyone whose work would take them out from the classification of philosopher? A lot of them. Yeah, because they were still writing for an audience. They were still writing for the general public. The educated, but the general public. Where philosophers are not doing that. NP Hunt says, I've asked before, so I know you think his stuff is lightweight, but fun/fine. But I really think you'd do great conversations with Robin Ince. I don't recognize the name Robin Ince. I don't recognize that name. I don't know that author. DT, I picked up Harold. Oh, no. The chat jumped. DT picked up something. What was it? Let's go back to DT here. Let's blast. There we go. I picked up Harold Goddard's 2-volume The Meaning of Shakespeare based on the title at book sale for $2. Was it a good decision? For $2 it was. Yeah. A lot of stuff in there that's interesting for $2. Wouldn't pay any more than that. Don't pay any more than that. Tolstoy 111. We've talked about the bestsellers of earlier generations being unfairly dismissed. So I'm curious, do you like Valley of the Dolls? I do. I don't think it's impossible to not like Valley of the Dolls. Trish Bovell. Sorry I'm late. Couldn't tear myself away from Meg 2. Street Medic. There are lots of philosophers that can be classified differently. Descartes, Kant, Russell. There are lots of philosophers that can be classified differently, but you haven't named 3 of them. Ryan says, Steve, when do you edit/rewrite? Sorry to stay hung up on this. I'm just wondering how many drafts authors do. Edward St. Aubin says 50. Dennis Lehane says 3. What is it for you? I'm not writing anything for publication, so I've never actually gone into gear. I'm assuming you're talking about fiction. I don't rewrite any of my book writing, my book reviews. I don't rewrite them at all. I maybe I'll have somebody go over them for typos, but I don't rewrite them. They're not drafts, for Pete's sake. But if you're talking about fiction, I've almost never had to face it. I can't imagine 50. That seems to me just a lie. But either way, no matter how many it is, the key for the writing collective is that it's a long way from now. It's Christmas. It's next Christmas. That's when it will happen. You should only be concerned with writing now, not with any part of editing. J. Scott Phillips. So half an hour-ish a day to write 1,000 words, but no editing. How about sub-vocalizing? Editing while writing is the sub-vocalizing of writing. Huh? Is that Benjamin McAvoy quality or what? Editing while you're writing is the equivalent of sub vocalizing while you read. Um, Andy Gaia, Southern Gothic starter kit would be complete stories of Flannery O'Connor, except no substitute. DT says Gmail is 15 gigabytes. I've been thinking of just mass deleting it. I used to think it could be like a ready made book of letters, but I literally have no interesting emails, save one or two. Yeah, I'm not getting this bit about saving emails. Jasper Antonelli, one thing I do while reading and writing that helps me is imagining how I would direct a scene or fit for film. Helps me to get a grip on things. A lot of film people that I know, movie buffs and also film students and whatnot, all agree. They would say the same thing. I'm not, so I don't think of it that way. DT, is James Stewart's Disney War good? Is he a good writer? I feel like reading it given their current troubles. I don't think I've ever read it. Hannah's Books is back. Uh, Responding to that long line of fence pickets with a reading list of Southern Gothic. Okay, NP Hunt. I agree with that. The Bigfoot interview was awesome. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. I thank you very much for the people who are mentioning this, but it really does remind me of how many persistent emails I get from people saying, "Please do more interviews." I, I take that very well. That really warms the cockles of my transplanted rhesus monkey heart when people say, "Please do more interviews." Especially when people say your interviews don't seem like other people's interviews. They don't seem canned. They seem very organic. It's absolutely true. And believe it or not, one of the reasons why I don't do more interviews is because a lot of people who are out there doing press want the questions ahead of time, and I have to tell the publicist or their agent that's not how I'm planning on having a conversation. I might be able to give you the first question that I'll ask, but after that, all everything's going to come from the conversation. And they say no. They no. Person X, author X, celebrity X needs all the questions ahead of time. Well, so I'm sorry, then we don't do it. I don't have a boss breathing over my shoulder. If I'll suggest it, I can help. I can put whatever it is they're touring for. I can put it in front of thousands of people. But I don't have a boss telling me to do this. I don't have to accept any conditions. So, uh, uh, and the result, the interviews that I've done, the result is, I think, much more enjoyable to watch. Feels like a real conversation. Uh, NP Hunt says, also, you need to publish your fiction. Your ravenous hordes demand it. Well, that would involve help from other people. I don't think I'm going to be able to figure out how to do this all by myself. I think I'm going to need the guiding hand of someone who's already done it to do it for me or to do it with me. So, Tolstoy 111, some years ago, a local pop culture reporter left a Justin Bieber show early and mentioned an encore she read he did in an earlier show, assuming he'd do it again. He didn't. She got fired. Yeah. Yeah. I have horror stories like that from the American Midwest, from Illinois and Iowa and Ohio. Horror stories. Back when there were papers everywhere, back when all papers published original stuff, where you'd feel ashamed if anything. Maybe the front page would be wire stuff, but otherwise it was all you. It was all the community. You had a staff of reporters, and I had some people. Oh my! I had some. There are horror stories I could tell, including a reporter of my own who I sent to review a show and who did not go to the show. did not go to the show, and wrote up a piece anyway. Uh, the Street Medic says, "That's it. We're not minions. We're ravenous hordes." Christina Alvarez says, "Oh no, I'm late. Hi everyone." J. Scott Phillips says, "Thoughts about King Charles's diagnosis?" Yeah, yeah, this guy can't catch a break. Can he? He just can't catch a break. Jasper Antonelli, Joe Spivey is a bit spindly to be a weightlifter. I doubt that he lifts weights. I doubt that he does. More the cycling type. Long string of lines. Thank you for the. Oh, he's responding to Hannah. NP Hunt. I still can't find 1515 by Dove Stephen. No, the 1515 has never seen the light of day. I loved doing it though. Oh my god, it was so much fun to do. I came up with the right cast of characters. That was the key. Is that all of my main every chapter rotated to a different character's perspective, and they were all historical characters. None of them were made up, and that made all the difference. That made all the difference in the world. Uh, Hannah's Books. Micah, Grix, and Joe might not be as good at carrying your book hauls, but they are going to be great bookish young friends for you. They would be. They're all welcome here. Mike has actually been here. They're all welcome here. Uh, Tolstoy 111, the way it works for the Codex Cantina guys. I don't know what that's referring to. It must be up further in the chat. Street Medic, I work out of my total gym just to stay in shape, but if I have to deal with a violent patient, I just give them hot shot of Haldol. Yeah, it might as well not be in English. Hannah's books, but Steve, you could find chemistry with a log. It's your greatest talent, I think. Some of my old boys, a log would have been an improvement. I have a talent. I don't know if you're being sarcastic, but I have a talent for friendship. It's a dog thing. I learned it from the people I grew up with. Mode Doyle says hello. Sean G says thoughts on Tucker Carlson interviewing Putin in Kremlin. I don't think that's what happened. I think that Putin was interviewing him um, for a job. I think there was a job interview going on there. It was meant to be revolting. Tucker Carlson is leaning into the fact that he is widely hated and regarded as a traitor. Uh, he's just leaning into that. That is the era that we live in. People are not just self-consciously evil; they rejoice in it, they exalt in it. Um, that one of Trump's red hat goons going on public radio where people could hear him and saying they're going to be kids in cages. It's going to be glorious. That's just evil. That's just a cartoonish. That's a movie character saying that kids in cages crying for their parents is going to be glorious. That's just an evil thing to say. And I'm not saying he doesn't mean it. He does mean it. But this kind of thing that Tucker Carlson is doing, it's evil, but it's also performance of evil. It's millenarian thinking. It runs rampant through the fascist forces that now govern so much of the world. Is millenarian thinking. We can be as bad as anything because it's not going to matter. Nothing's going to be around in 10 years. It's not going to matter. I'm never going to be in the dock at The Hague. Uh, Dan Sarkowski says, love your work. Well, thank you. J. Scott Phillips, speaking of Sean Standfast, it's great to see him finally settled in his new digs and posting robust videos again. Yeah, that's a nightmare. That's a nightmare. I mean, think about your own situation. That's a nightmare enough to have to move if you're in perfect health. Sean has long COVID. He was not in perfect health. He couldn't have done anything on his own. It would have just been a nightmare. And BookTube came through. Sean G says, I like Biden, but let's be honest, he looks like he's hanging by a thread. Concerning. He looks that way. He isn't that way, but he looks that way. It is concerning. I agree. It's a firebrand would be good. One has not been on the horizon since Obama. A firebrand would be good, where you watch it and you just know. There are some out there, but it is a little bit concerning that this guy he's very old, he's very frail, he's got limited capacity. But I tend to agree with Brian Tyler Cohen, and not just because he's a kumquat. I tend to agree that if you're going to say that about Biden, you ought to temper it by looking at the fact that as older and weak and frail as he looks, he's getting a job done, a lot of work done. You have to balance that against what he looks like or what he seems like. Ryan, Steve, will you treat us to a story about working with a famous author? I had beers with Bret Easton Ellis and have a good one, but not enough characters to tell. Let's not get started about Bret Easton Ellis, shall we? That would lead us by a quick road to Tama Janowitz, and we don't want to go there. That reading guy says we also need another. Oh, where did you go? That reading guy was telling me that we also need something else, and then the chat jumped. Let's find you. Oh my God, look at all these comments. All right, well, we also need another bean watch. Oh, well, she settled down. She was making her bed, but she settled down. Street Medic, MAGA keeps saying there is no Russian connection, but people like Tucker Carlson make pilgrimages to grovel at his feet. No Russian connection. What a ridiculous thing. Well, MAGA just lies to their supporters. They assume that their supporters are so stupid that they'll believe anything, literally anything. Graveyard Shift. Hi, Steve. So great to see you live. Here I am live. NP Hunt, such a shame you didn't meet any of the old British wrestlers. I was a pro wrestling journalist for a while, got to meet a lot of famous names. It's a shame you don't have any dirt to dish. No, I don't. Jasper Antonelli, Descartes' only real useful legacy is in math, and Fermat beat him to the punch by almost a century. I have to take your word for that. Hurish, has Steve read The Corral? by Tiruvalluvar. I don't know. We'd have to ask him. Gandhi Angles is responding to Ryan. Joshua Crabo says, do you think it's too late to join the writing collective? No, not at all. I joined the writing collective today. I have been the number one disappointment of the writing collective for 6 days. It was only today that I figured out what I'm writing. So it's not too late at all. Hannah's book says editing as sub-vocalizing. OMG, it's true. It's very Benjamin McAvoy, so you know it's true. Editing while you write is the same as sub-vocalizing while you read. You will cut your progress by 2/3. You shouldn't do it. They are two different things. Street Medic. Well, Descartes did establish analytical geometry. Take your word for that. Monet Doyle. I have changed how I read. I have started annotating a book I'm enjoying with a highlighter. Well, I'm wholeheartedly behind the annotating, not with a highlighter. Oh my god. Oh my god. You can't use a pencil. DT reading Lemony Snicket books with a boy in the family. Is there a way to do the Lemony Snicket books well for children? A good concept executed poorly. I can't understand the popularity of these. Oh no, I have to disagree. It's a good concept executed well. I think your kid will agree. Surely you're not telling me that the boy in the family is not enjoying them. That cannot be true. Tolstoy 111, Steve, you and Benjamin McAvoy would have great chemistry talking about all those life-changing words. Agree. Oh, yeah, that'd be great. Monet Doyle, do you annotate books you read? I do, very much so. That reading guide, did you watch the Fall of Minneapolis documentary about the death of George Floyd? I did not. DT, when is your book of Contra Dude Bro advice coming out? Can we help you collect it? I have thought about such a book. Of doing such a project. Nonfiction, 170 pages long. I would proof it. I would send it out to a small publisher, a very small publisher, and try and get them interested in just running it. And I already know it would be called Guys, Guys, Guys. And it would be about all the fake, griftery, stupid advice out there on the internet. I haven't sit down to block it out or write it. Street Medic, I think Steve and McAvoy should have a cage match. Well, depending on what we did in the cage. MP Hunt, Robin Ince's name will probably ring a bell if I say he writes books about books. A British comedian who tours with Brian Cox and they host multiple podcasts on the radio together. I've never heard that name. Ryan, I worked in a bookstore in Blowing Rock, North Carolina with Boone and Jane Karen tried to pick me old. Near Boone and Jan Karen tried to pick me old. Okay, I'm not following that. I'm not following some of these comments. Gandhi Angles recently watched David Susskind's interview with Truman Capote. I found Susskind to be unbelievably rude and unkind. Yeah, something of a scandal in the day. A well-known scandal, a well-known just oddity. Yeah, they're unwatchable for me. That kind of. No, I agree. Ryan, my published writers friends say to ask yourself, are you writing for yourself or for others? Which for you, Steve? It has to start with you. You can craft the story well. That's the part that's for other people. So you're not just staring at your own navel the whole time. But what I started out this Stevestream saying is it has to be you. It has to be true to you. It can't be that you're writing for someone else. Christina says, a couple of months ago, you mentioned a wonderful collection of books were donated to the Brattle, and you even offered to help someone purchase them. Did anyone take you up on that? No. The Brattle still has, up on the second floor, they still have a gigantic kernel of a great library on the American Revolution. The best collection of such books that I have ever seen in one place. The collection that's on the second floor of the Brattle right now on the American Revolution is better than the American Revolution collection at the Boston Public Library. It's better than the collection at the at the Boston Athenaeum. There has to be an institution out there somewhere who would want that collection. They could call the Brattle and get the whole thing for what? $3,000 would get it done, and I would be happy to help. I would be happy to curate what you get for that money. I'd be happy to do that. It would be an amazing collection. No, they're sitting up there. The worst possible thing. Connor at the shop was telling me, no one's interested in these things. These are certainly going to end up in the sale lot. Eventually, they're going to end up out in the sale lot. That's a crime. But you can lead a horse to water. Anti-Guy says Trump is the one losing his marbles. That whole rant about our missile defense system would have been funny if it weren't so scarily dumb. The comments that he makes now regularly are unbelievable. They're just unbelievable. People always comment, the news commentariat, but also ordinary people always comment that Trump cult is remarkably stupid. They just don't see what's in front of them. They're proud of it. And they go on all day, every day about Joe Biden is incompetent. He's mentally incompetent. What was it? I think the last time David Murphy was here, we were driving in the rental car and we were listening to, I think he put on some podcast. I think it was a podcast, a right wing, a conservative podcast. And the two hosts took it as a matter of course. They weren't contending it at all. They took it as a matter of course, like the sun coming up in the morning, that Joe Biden is a gibbering, drooling idiot, that he is utterly mentally gone, completely non functionally senile, something that is obviously not true. You can see that that's not true. No matter what you say about how sharp he is, you can see that he's not absolutely checked out, husk of a body, drooling on himself, senile. And yet these two hosts were characterizing him that way without. That wasn't what they were talking about. They weren't trying to make the case. That was their starting point. And all of Trump cult is like that. That's where they start off, and yet they can ignore what their own God sounds like when he gets in front of a microphone. Only one of those two people sounds like he's had a traumatic head injury, and it's not Biden. Uh, anyway, Jasper Daily, do you have any advice for finding friends? I feel awkward just randomly striking up conversation in public. Feels wrong and just not to be done anymore. Uh-oh. That's not good news for Steve. I routinely strike up conversations in public all the time. I'll walk right up to somebody and say, how you doing? What's that you're reading? How's the day? What about this weather? What do you think about this story in the news? I, typically, the way to find friends is now in the 21st century is to find some shared interest. Join a rock climbing club. Join the book club at your library. Join a golf club or a book club in your neighborhood or something like that. And maybe the people directly involved in it won't end up being your friends, but maybe they will have friends. You'll get to know their network, and you never know where it will click. That's the typical safe way to do it. Now that I know that striking up conversations in public at random is wrong. DT, what do you think of Hitchens as a critic? He's a very good critic, especially his unacknowledged legislation. Every time you mention him, it seems like you have got more than just a slight criticism of him. Most of my criticisms of him are not slight at all. Most of them are pretty serious. But his book writing is wonderful, usually wonderful. Only a couple of examples I can think. I have every collection of his, and almost there are only a couple of examples I can think of in the whole run of them that are just self-indulgent. Most of them aren't. I honestly, I mean, he was prone to self-indulgence. But I get the impression that when he sat down at his, a pad of paper or a typewriter or then a computer, when he sat down to have a dialogue, discussion with a book, I think that went straight down to the bottom of him. I think that he really cared about that and couldn't trivialize it into name dropping and bloviation. I don't think it was easy for him to do that, which is the only explanation I can come up with for how seldom he does that. Instead, his pieces are conscientious in ways that I don't find most of the rest of his writing. NP Hunt says, when I mentioned Robin Ince to you previously, I asked if his books on books were good. You said decent, but not destination or something similar. I can understand why his name doesn't stand out. I have never heard this name before. So if I talked about his books, I had to be under the impression you were talking about someone else. I don't know why that would be, because that name isn't like any other name. But I had to be. I've never heard of this person, so I had to have been under the impression that you were talking about someone else. DT, how does Hitchens compare to Gore Vidal as a literary critic? He doesn't have the gravitas, and he doesn't have the reach of Gore Vidal at the peak of his powers. Not Gore Vidal later on, but Gore Vidal at the peak of his powers had not only a reach in terms of all the stuff that he could bring to a review, not just literary, but social and cultural, and also a kind of twinkle in the eye. Hitchens doesn't have that. He was very much a Mongol product of Fleet Street, so I'm not sure that he could ever have had that. I'm not sure that that would ever have been possible. In his own set, in his own circle, you can see the difference between him and, for instance, Salman Rushdie. Their writing about books is radically different. Uh, so if I were to compare them, I would say that they're very, very different. They're very different. Vidal's book writing. I always hesitate to say literary critic, but his book writing is I almost said sui generis, but it's not. It's not. But it doesn't come from academia, and it doesn't come from Fleet Street. It comes almost feels like it's telegraphed in from the world. Hitchens couldn't do that. He couldn't even simulate that. So they're very different. At least they're very different. Any of that made sense. DT says, "What are your favorite works of Hitchens?" His book writing is my favorite stuff. All the volumes of his book writing. All of I mean, he does prepared for the worst and all those. Uh, he does periodic essay collections. Even there, I find them uneven. I go straight for the literary stuff. Um, DT says, "What are your favorite? Oh, what are your favorite works of Hitchens?" I already covered that. NP Hunt. I'd love to do a 2-hour conversation with John Robson. NP Hunt corrects that to Ronson. John Ronson. I do not know John Ronson. Well, I don't know what's going on here with the chat. Either I'm having a mental aphasia or the rest of you are, but I do not know that name. Matt Sheridan. Got to get back to reading Night. Steve comes first. Tolstoy 111, they call it Cartesian geometry for a reason. Street Reddick is responding to Tolstoy 111. Anti-Guy says, because of these current events, are there any good books out there about the prosecuting of Confederate officials during the Reconstruction? I'm sure there are. I don't know them. Reconstruction has been a kind of a lazy period in my reading. Really, there's not much there. Jasper Antonelli, have you heard that a frightening percentage, somewhere well north of 50, of kids under 10 in America can't read fluently? Yeah, it's a staggering number. It hasn't made it through to the popular imagination because nothing does, but it's a staggering number. I don't remember like you, I don't remember the exact percentages and the exact demographics or whatnot. But the two things that are amazing, that just horrify, are the number of kids under the age of 11 who vape a lot. So a lot. They do it in class because they'll go nuts if their teacher tries to stop them. Their parents don't know. They're severely addicted to nicotine at age 8, 9, 10. That number, and also the number of those same kids who can't read. They can recognize things here and there. They can fake it, like Donald Trump, who fakes it, but they can't actually read. Those two numbers, those two percentages and numbers, and the different graphs and the different demographics for the different responses are astonishingly high. They ought to be a gigantic cause for concern because, as trite as it sounds, that's the future. So we should all care about that. Uh, NP Hunt says, I know you said it's prohibited, but the story I want to turn into a novel is the only thing I want to write. Should I ditch the backstory part, write the main story, and maybe go backwards later? I would say that. Yeah. If you absolutely can't write something new, then do that. Yeah. DT, is there a basic minimum you should know to get cultural references? I'm thinking of a book I saw on another shelf, on another's shelf, Cultural Literacy by Hirsch, and numerous other in the same vein. Those don't tend to work. They're all out there, cultural literacy and all that sort of stuff. They're all out there, books like that, but they don't work. The only way that you're going to get these things is to get these things, is to breathe them, is to encounter them organically. So the key here to get the basic minimum that you're talking about is just to read a lot, read widely, and read a lot, and chase down the references that you don't get. I've never known one of those prescriptive guides. Here's what you need to do. Erasmus wrote one of those. I've never known them to work in all these centuries. I've never known them to work. It's just another book that you. What are you going to do with that? With the material in a book like that? Memorize it? It has to be organic, or it won't work. You just have to come to peace with the fact that you're never going to have it all. We're all coming from different shards of culture. We all have different sponges of learning. I go through Saint Simon or Gore Vidal or even Peter Prescott. I go through anybody. I will find cultural references that I don't get at all. Like this. I'm going through this right now. Uh, I'm rereading this, and Cronenberger was he's a smart guy, but no offense to the honored shade, but he's no smarter than I am. He just has a huge amount of cultural references that I don't have. I have a huge amount of cultural references that he wouldn't get. It's you just have to make your peace with. You're not going to get everything. DT says, how do you tell someone starting out where to fill their head enough to be able to enjoy the elusive nature of a lot of literature? It's the same thing. There isn't a one place to go. There isn't a way to do that. Not an organic way to do it. And if it's not organic, it's not going to be real. You're not. I don't know what you would do with a book like that. I've never known the purpose of them. You just have to read widely, and you'll eventually pick up a culture of your own. You'll pick up a body of illusions on your own, and the good ones that you find in other things that weren't part of that body, you can add them to your body if you really want to. Uh, Street Medic, I used to watch Firing Line just to yell at the screen. It was kind of fun. Gandhi Angle says, have you gotten your hands on the new biography of Taft by Robert Post? I have not. The Spaminator, not yet. It's not a biography. If it's a book that I'm thinking of, it's not a biography of Taft. It's a huge study of the Taft court. I'm assuming that's the thing you're talking about. And I haven't got it yet. I'm still hoping. There are two things that I really want in the mail, and that's one of them. One of them is Taft, and the other one, his name also starts with a T. And I really want both of those things. I just don't want to push it. That's all, because I don't want to be told you're bothering me. The Spaminator is here. On Truth in Fiction, Ray Bradbury said the first good story he wrote was The Lake because he finally stopped trying to imitate writers he loved and start writing truthfully for himself. And then the chat jumped. I swear the chat jumps every time the Spaminator shows up. What does it know that all the rest of us know? Let's go back to where you were. Where were you? Oh my God! Look at all these comments. We're gonna go back to the Spaminator. I missed it. Why does the chat do this? I swear. I think I went too far. We're going to blast through a whole bunch of comments as soon as I find where we left off. We left off with the Spaminator. There we go. Joshua Crabo, I've tried listening to Trump's speeches and they are almost incoherent. They're unbelievable. They're unbelievable. Once again, as I've said many, many times before, the American mainstream media is actively misserving the public. This is the worst hour, the hour when we need them the most. This is the worst hour for the American mainstream media. And that is what they do. They take a Trump, one of these, they're available on YouTube. Watch the whole of a speech that he gives in Iowa, New Hampshire, or wherever the hell he goes. Watch the whole of it from the minute he shambles on stage and needs to find the podium, even though it's right in front of him, to the minute when he shambles off, being heavily guarded by his entourage and dragging one foot. Very visibly dragging one foot. Watch the whole of it. Mainstream media will give you a coherent 2 minutes. Not even 2 minutes. Good Lord, 15 seconds. They'll give you a coherent 15 minutes. 15 seconds. Watch the whole thing. Any whole thing, anywhere that he does now. He's completely incoherent. He's completely nuts. Anyway, Gandhi Angles, what would Gore Vidal say about Trump? He had plenty to say about the Trump manqués of his day. I don't think he'd be a big fan. Whereas I'm not 100% sure I could say that about Hitchens. Hitchens might see this guy's hated by everybody, so I'm going to defend him. Could easily do that. He could easily pull a Victor Davis Hanson. Tolstoy 111, do you like Richard Dawkins as a writer? The God Delusions is fun, even if you don't agree. I agree. I do like him as a writer. NP Hunt, sorry for saying, quote, name retracted his name so much. I'm honestly not sponsored and have no fairy lights. Street Medic, Ray Bradbury is one of my favorite writers, but he's never been translated well on screen. Jasper Antonelli says, my roommate got into a bad car crash this Christmas, and he said his first thought was to one, find his vape, and two, find his phone to call for help. I'm sure it was in that order. And people think about it when adults, especially parents, think about it. They think, "Ah, this is terrible. All my coworkers, God, they can't live without this little thing that they suck on all the time." Never even occurs to them that their primary school kids have those things. They're easy to hide. Your primary school student is surrounded all day by kids their own age, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, that are vaping all day long. Andrew McDonald says, what did you make of Gary Groth's article, My Dinner with Hitch? I'm not sure that I read it. J. Scott Phillips, an odd point of momentary curiosity. What is the closest book you have right now within arm's reach? I've got two of them here. I have Republic Letters by Louis Kronenberger. Been rereading this. Absolutely love his long. He did a long essay in here on Boswell and Johnson, and it is wonderful, just wonderful. Oh my god! I don't actually remember. I don't remember if he tells us who he wrote this for, but it's such a long piece. I wonder if that's credited in here. It's 1947, but I don't think he ever actually says who commissioned this. That's okay. It's not on the piece. Did he do it in his acknowledgments? No, not really. Uh, oh, okay. I guess Viking in 1947 did a volume called Johnson and Boswell, and that must be the introduction. It must be. It's so long. And then the other thing is this. Uh, this gigantic thriller that came out today in America. Uh, NP Hunt got really angry 2 nights ago. Supervisor told me that the guy who works at my site on my off days found a dog who was running around in the road, called him over, kept him in our office shed. Okay, why would that? There must be a part two to that. Why would that make you angry? Uh, Tolstoy 111. E.D. Hirsch turns 96 next month. Well, who doesn't? Martin, your advice about cultural literacy applies to language learning too. No sense in learning the thousand most common words in isolation. You'll encounter them often enough because they're common. Jasper Antonelli says reading curriculums remind me of the 4chan joke of a guy who wanted to start with the Greeks but made himself read the Babylonians first. Oh my god. Oh my god. Literature dude bros. I hate them so much. Speaking of Benjamin McAvoy, I hate people who think, yeah, I need all this to be real, dude. I need truth with a capital T and wisdom with a capital W and the ancients with a capital A. Uh, Kevin J.N., any inside baseball on why Stephen Fry seems to have disappeared from the American landscape? Has America really devolved that much? Where would he go? Where would he fit in America? What would he? What would the American landscape do with him? Uh, J. Scott Phillips. Well, damn. As soon as I posted that, you held up the Republic of Letters. So, what's the second closest book? Well, I had two. I have these two in front of me here. I guess after that would be this, which is my next review, and this, which I've been very much enjoying, this beautiful paperback of Essex Dogs. I think that's it. Well, aside from, of course, the iPad, which has, at last count, 11,000 books on it. That reading guy, wow, the spam editor makes a soft entrance if there ever was one. NP Hunt says, then let him go. Oh, okay, here's the part two. Then let him go randomly on a housing estate behind our actual site. Just hoped he found his house. I was so angry I couldn't speak. You don't leave vulnerable people to fend for themselves. I know. I know. No, that I'm just kind of hoping that wouldn't be the conclusion to that story. That is bewildering to me. Just bewildering. Person needs your help. Just because they can't ask in English, you're not going to give it to them. Um, Michael Lombardo, you're waiting on a biography of Mr. T. No, no, I didn't say a biography. There are two T's that I want in the mail. Taft is one of them. There's another author whose name starts with T that I very much want in the mail. And in both cases, I'm so hesitant to reach out to the publicist and say, any progress on that? Because I don't want to bother them. Gandhi Angle says, I see so many kids on bikes staring at their phones. It makes me feel sad. Yeah, Tolstoy 111 for literary cultural literacy. I highly recommend Daniel S. Burt's list books. Uh, oh, the chat jumped again. Goodness gracious. That reading guy. If I watch a full Trump speech, I will certainly need at least a mental health week to recover. Every American, you're not being served by the mainstream media. Every American should watch one of those speeches from front to back, from beginning to end, all of it. To see the full, it is so easy, even if you don't like Trump, it's so easy to listen to someone like me and say, oh, Trump derangement syndrome, orange man bad. I'm watching the whole of this, and there is no way to avoid what you're seeing when you do. There is no way, if you watch an unedited Trump speech, you only have to do one. If you watch an unedited Trump speech on YouTube, you will not be able to get to the end of it and say, that guy is okay. You will get, no matter what speech it is, you will get to the end of it and say there's something seriously wrong with that person. Not morally, that person is physically ill. There's no way you won't come to that conclusion. And yet, 150 million Trump cult members watch that in rapture because I firmly believe they are in an altered state of mind. They aren't hearing what he's actually saying. Francisco, hi, Steve. I just arrived on the Stevestream. I don't know if you've said it before, but I'm very curious to know if you've settled on a theme, plot, etc. for your novel. I have indeed. I have indeed. The Trials of Esther. I have settled on a book. I know what the plot is. I know what the characters are. I know what's going to happen. It's just I'm gonna start tonight. As soon as I get this Steve stream has to end. First of all, we've been going for 2 hours, so we have to wrap this up. Once I'm done with this, take care of the bean, settle her for the night. I have a one block thing that I need to do, get that done for tomorrow morning, and then I'm free to write for a chunk of my reading time. I will write to make up for the fact that I've been letting down my own collective. NP Hunt, the vape then phone comment made me think of King of the Hill, where Dale looks for his cigarettes before anything else, while four of his friends might drown. Yeah, it's the way of drug addiction. You can read all about it in The Fatal Shore, for instance, a book about the founding of Australia. There's endless accounts in there of convicts being shipped over to Australia, and they they their choice is, you've been caught stealing rations of tobacco. We're going to flog you, and if you keep it up, we're going to keep flogging you. And these people, plenty of those convicts, who did keep it up because they had no choice and would just be simply flogged to death. They'd be flogged until their bodies broke apart. Joshua Crabo, do you like opera, Steve? I've recently been watching a few. Yes, I do. Yes, I do. You've barely ever heard it on my channel, but I do, very much so. Gandhi Angles, just moved to a new neighborhood. My first acquaintance on my walk was a baby dachshund named Seymour Butts. Of course, I also met his caretaker. We had a dachshund in this neighborhood for a bit with their disconcertingly deep voices. He doesn't seem to be around anymore. His owners must have left. J. Scott Phillips, whenever Johnson and Boswell comes out, I can't help but think of Holmes and Watson. The Spaminator, a while back, I tried vaping to put down the occasional cigars and pipes. I was so much worse, just way too easy to use literally anywhere. It made me physically ill. It's a thing. The thing about it is you don't have to stop ever. Until legislation catches up with it, you don't have to stop. Right now, with processed tobacco products, there's this whole mechanism, this huge ungainly mechanism. You're in a crowd of normal people who aren't drug addicts. You have to excuse yourself. You have to wait until you can't take it anymore. Then you have to excuse yourself, gather all of your equipment, go outside to some area, regardless of the weather, indulge in your drug habit for 20 minutes out there, and then come back inside and reinsert yourself into whatever's going on. And that you have to do that all the time, and that's cumbersome. And vaping takes that away completely. Uh, Michael Lombardo, I just literally grabbed a withdrawn, slightly stained Everyman's Count of Monte Cristo. Any word of the translation from Ellsworth? No word that I know of. Gandhi Angle says the Terry Hayes book is on my list, as well as Paul Theroux's upcoming release. I don't know quite what I'm making of this Terry Hayes book. I don't quite. It's a big deal. I should be liking it. I should like it more than I do. Connor says, you don't read for truth. I guess you don't live the life of the mind. Maybe you should start getting involved in the great conversation. I know. I'm clearly missing the boat. I don't know how to do this reading thing. JP Jazzman 2020. Hi, Steve. Best book on Taft. It's still Pringle's book. A guy named Pringle wrote a 2-volume biography of Taft 100 years ago. And it's still the best thing. And it's available. I mean, it was brought out, and I think Easton Press did it in their presidential library series. It's been reprinted in nice leatherbound editions. I ought to get one. I don't have one that is. There was also, for a while, there was a presidential library, Brief Lives of Presidents series. I forget who did it, but they all look the same, sort of misty watercolor on the cover. And their volume for Taft was pretty good. And it's short. It's not a gigantic investment of time. Street Medic, speaking of Watson, one of my pet peeves is his depiction as an imbecile. He wasn't, and Holmes wouldn't tolerate an idiot hanging around all the time. Exactly. No, Watson is sharp. No matter what we're encountering in the How to the Baskervilles at the moment is Holmes constantly berating him, constantly giving him sly insults. But no, the Holmes Watson dynamic doesn't work if Watson's a moron. It fundamentally falls apart. So yeah, I agree completely. Anti-guy, the only way I can watch a full Trump speech is with David Pakman commenting with his charming dry humor. Right, but he is part of the failure of mainstream media. If you have millions of viewers, you're mainstream, whether you're on YouTube or not. He's part of the failure of it because he's not alarmed. None of them are. They're not alarmed. You don't. A 30-something kid does not use the dumb Baroque word bonkers, which now they now all by contract use. If you get a contract to be a talking head on MSNBC, you've got to use the word bonkers or you don't get paid. Bonkers, a word that no one uses, that no one's used since the 1950s. But Pakman put it in circulation, so now everyone has to say it. Everyone has to say bonkers. Everyone has to say cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. Everyone has to say, I didn't think the leopards would eat my face. Everyone has to use the word permission structures. Everyone has to do these things, this stupid left-wing Mad Libs that is at its heart unalarmed. It is not serious. David Pakman is going to be shot against a wall if the things he's being blasé about actually happen. And try seeing that in what he does on camera. Try seeing this on what any of them do on camera. Pakman or the Bulwark or anybody. Closest person that anyone comes to it is Jesse Dollemore. To what I want to see, which is alarm. This guy's minions, his thugs, have published what they want to do when they seize power, which will not be through Trump winning an election. It will be through Trump being in an election. That's all they want, is for him to be in an election. They'll take it from there. And so will, as they've already said, your local police. Your local police have been offered complete indemnity from any kind of criminal prosecution for anything that they do on behalf of the guy who's offering them the indemnity. You might say, well, he won't have the military. The military won't obey an illegal law. If your police in your town say, well, Trump is willing to give us indemnity, and he wants this guy rounded up, and he shows up at your door, 2 cops show up at your door with a paddy wagon and sidearms, you're going. The Army's not coming to your defense in that moment. The Army's not even going to know about it. No one's going to know about it. His dry humor during a full Trump speech is predicated absolutely on the idea that this guy is a funny sideshow and that it can't happen here. It most certainly can happen here. And anyone in the mainstream media whose whole affect is, well, we're going to be really cynical about this because, we're going to have our jobs no matter who wins in 2024. Anyone who does that, who predicates their commentary on that, is misserving you. They're lulling people into not believing that America is on the actual cliff edge, and it is. Anyway, sorry. let's just keep going, shall we? NP Hunt, sweet Jesus. After someone else brought up his name, why isn't there a public movement to get Steve Fry's stream? The best name would probably be really banal. Those 2 Steves and books. I don't know that he'd like me at all. The knowledge doesn't matter. The chemistry is what matters. We might not have chemistry. Jasper Antonelli, I have a soft spot for Dude Bros. I made myself watch Better Than Books yesterday, and it was just as comfortingly bad as I remember. Mark says, starter kit idea, nautical novels. Oh, no. I have done nautical novels. There is no way that I have not. Your sea voyages have inspired me to join a crew sailing from Argentina to Antarctica on a 100-year-old tall ship. Would love some recommendations for the vibe. I have certainly done a nautical fiction list. That cannot be. It cannot be that I have not done that. Spaminator, Harlan Ellison routinely went on rants about cultural illiteracy. Of course, he routinely went on rants about lots of stuff, but hey, he was also culturally illiterate. Classic Harlan. The rants that he did were always about himself. He couldn't have. Francisco says, congratulations. Oh, where'd you go? All right, we're going back to Francisco. Here we go. Congratulations. I'm so happy you're starting to write tonight. I hope you make videos about talking about it. Oh, I certainly will. It's my collective. I have to make videos about it. Tolstoy 111, the floggings will continue till morale improves. J. Scott Phillips, I did not know John Philip Sousa wrote any opera. Oh, Jasper Antonelli, people are ridiculous with cigarettes. I've crushed a pack of somebody's cigarettes in front of them before, but I can't really do that with a vape. Well, no, you'd be in serious danger. A lot of the young people who can't live without their vape are armed. Uh, Tolstoy 111, Sousa is still widely underappreciated composer. I completely agree. Street Medic, smoking is so addictive. I once ran on a guy who was taking a breathing treatment through a mask while he had a cigarette jammed into his stoma. Yeah, and lighting up in oxygen rooms in hotels and hospitals that cause them to explode, and a million other things. But it's a minor thing, right? The tobacco industry will have it say this is the most minor, trivial decision in the world. Anyone who has the slightest problem with this, they're incredibly overreacting. That reading guy, how do you determine which books you cull from your library if you have an ebook of it? Well, an ebook helps a lot. It helps a lot for a whole bunch of categories, a whole bunch of books now that I routinely think of as ebook kinds of books. I do not need. Oh, what are good examples? The Brother Cadfael novels. They're terrific. I don't need them as books. I don't. They're perfectly fine as ebooks. And a million. Oh, there are a million other things that whole mystery runs. Every Donna Leon novel. I don't need a whole bookcase of Donna Leon novels. The ebooks are fine. So those can go. As a matter of course, those can go right away. That's the easy thing to do. Then there's all the new books. I can look at them. I'm generally pretty good at estimating from them which ones I really want and which ones are make weight. Somebody writes a book about here are some wacky facts about jungle animals that you didn't know. I will get that and I might review it, but I won't keep it. There's no reason to keep it. A make weight book about the pageantry of English royalty. Well, I know all about these people. If you're not going to do anything more than just trot them on stage for a few paragraphs, then I don't need to keep your book. I can review your book, but I don't need to keep it. That's easy too. It's the stuff in the middle. It's not always easy to tell what book you can find as an ebook. Like for instance, this thing I'm sure exists as an ebook, but this thing uh, almost certainly does not. So it's a whole video, isn't it? Ooh, I ought to make a video about how to cull your books. That ought to be fun. NP Hunt, so strange that you mentioned the colonization of Australia in regards to my comment on smoking. I played the main antagonist and simultaneously the indigenous person uh, during college. Uh, in Timberlake, Wurtenberger's "Our Country's Good." Okay, it had me going until then. That was a good wheeze until then. Of course, I don't believe that anyone was ever named Timberlake Wurtenberger. You've clearly made that up. You've gone a little too far. The joke was still good. The Spaminator, I'm bringing back the phrase, that's so cray cray. Everyone join in, 90s kids unite. Well, it has to go through David Pakman first. He came up with this ridiculous bonkers, and then everyone was saying it. Now, everyone is contractually obligated to say, you go on Joy Reid, you have to call something bonkers. Calling something bonkers when it's two whole generations before you were born is fundamentally unserious. It means you don't think the thing you're criticizing is dangerous. Nobody calls a mass shooter bonkers. It's the fundamental misserving of the public that is being done by mainstream media, in that this is not serious. You don't need to worry about it. If your cops go rogue, you will. Anyway, J. Scott Phillips. I know this will never happen, but I just wish the mainstream media would stop giving Trump any coverage at all. There's nothing new in any of it. Let's stop giving him the free oxygen. Yeah, they like the Trump bump, the celebrated Trump bump, and they think that you know that it doesn't matter. That we're not feeding anything that could kill us. They don't take it seriously. They don't encourage their audience to take it seriously. That reading guy, have you read Sinclair's book "It Can Happen Here" since 2016? Does it hold up? I have not. It was such a trendy thing to do that I did not. I imagine I will get around to it, but I didn't do it because everybody was. Uh, David Sloan, Steve, your channel has utterly engrossed me. Oh my, wasn't that nice? The only time I stop listening is when I'm in the car. I mistake your Boston emergency vehicles for my emergency vehicle. I have a lot of them. Although not today. Today's been very quiet. Actually, yesterday was really quiet too. Uh, Gandhi Angles, I watched the PBS doc on the Pullman Company, was surprised to learn Robert Todd Lincoln was president and fought against fair wages for railroad workers, including the majority black porters. Yeah, he fought against it mainly because of the black porters. Jordan Thomas, hey Steve, hope all is well. All is well. Rena's reading. You did the two if two by C, but you mean two if by C series about nautical fiction and nonfiction several years ago. Are you seriously telling me I've never done a nautical fiction starter kit? That's weird. Or nautical books starter kit. Maximus Stedich, it's so cathartic to hear someone else have nothing but vituperative scorn for the effete efforts of new media leftist commenters. I would say that their heart is in the right place. I would say that, but I don't think it's largely true. I don't think it's largely true. I think that Jesse Dollimore is probably genuinely outraged by what he's seeing. His videos seem more or less unscripted to me. They seem more like the passionate outpourings of someone who finds this stuff dangerous and angering. But a lot of the others, uh, fair and balanced, fair and cousins, he absolutely, the underlying statement of his videos is that the rule of law is going to continue completely uninterrupted forever. No matter what he says about how he thinks this is a danger to the rule of law, the assumption in his videos, the 2 minutes that he can bring himself to talk before he starts hawking his channel, are completely unruffled. In the world that informs his commentary, the rule of law might be a little bit perturbed here and there, but is not in any danger. It's not in any danger of ending. And so with all the rest of them. Every once in a while, I think that maybe I can sense a genuine sense of the scope of the problem underneath Brian Tyler Cohen's, passionate invective. But I never see it in Pac-Man at all. Not at all. And talk about the actual mainstream media is Morning Joe or any of the others. Even my beloved Lawrence O'Donnell. No, it's all just business as usual. We will keep doing this. We will keep deploring it. I used to cringe every time Joy Reid would say the mango Mussolini. What are you talking to? Children? Are you talking to children? About a guy who wants to kill you? Anyway, sorry. Let's let Jasper Antonelli. You've never done a nautical one. I think you maybe did a video with Mark Richardson, but I don't know if it's still up. DT says, so is Hitchens a bit dude bro for being such a contrarian regarding the uncertainty of his take on Trump? No, not a dude bro. No. But he was addicted to the attention of minority opinions. He was addicted to that, also addicted to the attention of making sure that guaranteed his booking on a whole bunch of shows. You're never in short supply for a booking. But I shouldn't be all that cynical about it, because a lot of his contrarian positions were in the stance of right when no one else was saying them. When no one else was saying the right thing about the whole Mohammed cartoon scandal. No one was saying the right thing, like Hitchens was, about that. No one was saying the right thing about the attack on Salman Rushdie, the fatwa on Salman Rushdie. No one was saying the right thing about that the way he was. So not all of his, I shouldn't be cynical and say that he was only contrarian, but what other explanation is there for supporting the Iraq war? It was obvious before even the first boot hit the ground that it was a fraudulent enterprise. I find it, like all of his friends or his former friends, I find it hard to believe that he honestly believed what he was saying about it. So who knows where he'd be now. Street Medic, I can't do ebooks. I've tried, but I just can't. Well, all right. I've known people who tried and couldn't do it until the penny drops. Finally, they realize, oh, I can do this easily. Max says, by the way, I apologize if I annoyed you in emails. Not my intention. Well, I'm never gonna be able to link emails with anybody in this chat. No, unless I know the person. Hannah, something like that. But otherwise, no. So if so none of the comments that I'm making about my email are directed specifically at anyone here. David Sloan says, can we get a Western canon starter kit for nonfiction? Haven't I done that? I thought I did that. Oh, those are all great ideas. I will remember them all. The chat jumped while I wasn't even looking at it that time. NP Hunt, I actually don't remember a starter kit for nautical novels, but I think I was just under another name. I think it was only about 5 recommendations. Okay, I'll check that and nonfiction. Connor says, Steve, you've got to write that Taft book. Wouldn't it be nice for people to say Donahue's Taft and refer to your book instead of your ex-lover? The Spaminator. If I don't at least really, really like a book after reading it, I cull it. Too much to read, too much buying, has to be constant rotation. I agree, constant rotation. Mac says, about halfway through Dominion by Tom Holland, I'm not sure narrative history works for as big a topic. History as 2,000 years. I think the narrative function makes it harder to argue his thesis. I agree with you. Generally, I agree, but Dominion I thought was more effective than a lot of his other books. Certainly, you can do narrative nonfiction for that length of time well. Just look at Christianity by Dermot McCullough. Uh, I don't think it fails. Well, you're not actually saying that it fails. I like that book probably more than I've liked anything by him. Wish I still had the physical copy that I got from the publisher. NP Hunt, there was another starter kit I recommended where I was sure you hadn't done it, but I couldn't find it. Andy Guy says, speaking of PBS, I'd be interested to see published a good biography of the documentary filmmaker Ken Burns. Street Medic says, nothing beats Hornblower in nautical fiction. You are incorrect, sir. Richardson Reads, good Lord. Jesus, I'm going to bed. Kidding. Hey, Steve. Mark, Street Medic just said no one beats Hornblower for nautical fiction. I wonder if you might agree with that, or would you put Patrick O'Brien first? That reading guy would what would the bean do if you took in another dog? I have no idea. I think she'd probably be stiff and very, very bossy at first, but then I think she might like it, depending on the other dog. The other dog can't have a single thought about asserting dominance of any kind. That would not work at all. But I don't know that they would. Dogs usually have. If I had a puppy, for instance, if I came across a just weaned little puppy, there would be no problem at all, none whatsoever. Uh, David Sloan says, "Oh, what I give to see Donahue's History of the Dude Bro in my Barnes and Noble one day." Yeah, guys would be my dude bro analysis and competing advice book. It would be competing advice. NP Hunt says, "Wait, you haven't read our very watched on Broadway's Our Country's Good by Timberlake Wettenberger. Like I accidentally found something Steve hasn't read. Yikes, don't tell anyone." Again with the Timberlake thing. Richardson reads, I've got a German Shepherd for him. How would that work? Yes, you're a big, beautiful German Shepherd. Ben Pessoa, you annoyed him both in email and chat. Uh, I don't know what that's about. Uh, okay. Richardson reads, we did a nautical live stream. Yes, we did. And we talked about a lot. Anti-Guy, I held out on ebooks forever, but after getting both a Paperwhite and a Samsung tablet with the Kindle app, it's most of my reading now. Well, it was said earlier in the chat, I've tried ebooks and I just can't. I've tried and I just can't. I have never known that to be categorically true. I know people who've said that and said that and said that, and then finally when no one's watching, when whatever factor is involved, they try it for real and realize, oh, this is just a different delivery method and maybe a better one. I could certainly do this. J. Scott Phillips, there was a great New Yorker cartoon from 2016, The Field of Sheep standing around a billboard of a wolf with the headline, I will eat you. And one sheep says to the other, he tells it like it is. Yeah, I saw that and was just just amazing. Sometimes New Yorker cartoons can be amazing. That is a classic one. There was also a great one I think it was right before the pandemic, this couple looking up in the sky and birds are flying south, but the bird formation, instead of being a V, it's the word run. They said, that can't be good. I thought, yeah. Maximus Stedish, do you still have the glimmer in your eyes to finish your biography of Taft? No. Oh, no, that's years old. If so, do you need any help from the writing collective? In any case, we're all very proud of you. Well, no, I did a novel of Taft and I did a nonfiction, a biography of Taft. I didn't like how either one of them came out. I would have to scrap all of it and start from the beginning. And I certainly not going to do that anytime soon. I have my project now. I have what I want to write now. Wait, where'd you go? Andrew McDonald says, speaking of Robert Hughes, what do you think of a couple of the other expat Australians, Germaine Greer and Barry Humphries? Germaine Greer, I could take or leave, but and Barry Humphries, I could take or leave, but Dame Edna? There is nothing better. Maximus Stedish, I love Uncle Bob. He's my mate. Richardson Reads, Patrick O'Brien, love Hornblower, though. All right. I wasn't sure because I think I probably like me. You Hornblower has much deeper roots. So I thought maybe that would do it. I don't think there's any real argument. It feels a little disloyal because I think like you, like I have such a huge, long, deep, sentimental relationship with Hornblower, but I wouldn't give it to Hornblower. I wouldn't give it to Forster. Definitely not. Jasper Antonelli, I think NP Hunt makes people up first. Now Timberlake Wettenberger. Timberlake Wettenberger. Mag, did you ever get the paperback for Dominion? Nope. Publishers almost never send me paperbacks. I've never seen it. Don't know if I'm blurbed on it in America. My copy has almost torn in half from Basic Books too. Maybe just an unlucky copy. Oh, that's right. Dominion was Basic Books. I wonder if they'd send me a hardcover from the warehouse. I wonder if they'd do that. No, I don't have any pretext to ask. I don't have any way to ask. Oh, that stinks. Oh well. The Brattle will provide. It will show up at the shop. That reading guide, my e-reader allows me to close off the world far more effectively than a clumsy physical book. It's certainly true for me. I think of my e-reader of e-reading as just closing off the world. The perfect way to put it. Uh, Gandhi Angles, I gave up on my New Yorker subscription. The deliveries were too inconsistent. Mine is delivered just fine. It's murderously expensive, but it's just fine. Oscar Sales Girl. Hey, Steve, just joined the stream. Currently reading Anthony Caldelis because of you. Thanks for an author recommendation. You know, a great historian for Prussian history. I would love to hear. There was one just recently. What was it? Chat, guys, help me out here. There was a huge biography of Prussia that I read it, I reviewed it, I loved it. It was just a few years ago. I'll never get it. I'll never get it in the chat. And also, speaking of the chat, we need to wrap this up. Can't just go on all night. The Spaminator dominance in dogs is crazy. I've said it before, but I watched a teacup Chihuahua punk down a French Mastiff. I never would have believed it if I hadn't seen it myself. It doesn't seem crazy to me. There's nothing about it that I don't understand. And also, I get to see it almost every day. I have a 10-pound ball of lint, who is the most dominant dog in this neighborhood. That is typical with my dogs, whether they take advantage of it or not, because Freeda has never. She doesn't remember anything. She doesn't remember her life for 8 weeks before me. So her whole world of meeting other dogs out in the world has been governed by me. where we meet a dog, that dog sizes up the territory and immediately offers deference. Not to her. They're offering it to me, but she doesn't know that. And that can really change things. That and the fact that she has killed now almost 50 mice in her life. She does things that brain pithed yellow labs don't ever get to do. They don't ever get to assess dominance at all. They don't ever get to do anything wild. They never get to be themselves or act on their own initiative, and it shows. So when we encounter a new dog or even an old dog that she knows, she will routinely just make sure that they know where things stand. That's what she'll do. She's not aggressive, but she makes sure they know that. And unfortunately for them, I'm right there. And what my baby wants, my baby gets. I'm sorry. I've lost track of how many bigger dogs have looked at her as she's bawling them out and then looked at me. And I basically have to say to them, sorry, you got to bend the knee. It's just the way it goes. You can't do anything else. You absolutely cannot growl at her or worse yet, offer her violence. No, absolutely not. So you got no choice. Sorry, baby. Sorry, baby. David Sloan, NP Hunt is referring to Timberlake Wertenbecker, an actual British playwright. Just got their last name wrong. This is the third spelling of this mythical person's name. Anti Gaia, Mark, did you enjoy the film with Russell Crowe? Well, you're all going to pretend now that this guy is real. NP Hunt, just as a rough guide, how much should an indie author be looking to pay for editors, whether it be proofreading, development, or a bit of other, or by other kind? Or is it a case of not knowing the market? It's not going to be. I've never done it, but the impression I get is that it's not really going to shake out by price. That it's going to shake out by whether or not the editor works with you, whether or not the editor gets along with you, and of course whether or not they do a good job. But you presume that someone's putting their talents online. There are places you can go. I don't remember the names of anything off the top of my head, but there are places you can go where the editors are not expensive. And I've not heard yet from that many indie authors that with editing or proofreading or copy editing, you get what you pay for, that old saw. I have not really heard that from them as much. They will say with covers, you get what you pay for. Pay for a cover, get a good cover, and check with other people as to whether or not it's good. Don't go by yourself alone. But editing, I don't really know the ballpark. These are things that I should know by now. I should be an old hand at publishing my own work, but I haven't explored. Street Medic, Western Canon Starter Kit, The Starry Messenger by Galileo, On the Revolution of Heavenly Spheres by Copernicus. Okay. Richardson reads, I did enjoy the film with Crow. That reading guide, currently reading the third book in Pullman's His Dark Materials. Are you a fan of Pullman? What is your favorite book by him? I am. Book of Dust was my favorite. Uh, Tolstoy 111, maybe you meant the bio of Frederick the Great by Asprey? No, no, this was just a few years ago. The thing I'm thinking of, it wasn't a person. It was the history of Prussia. Gandhi Angles, clumsy physical book. Those are fighting words. We'll never switch. All right, fine. Uh, whoop. Mac is. Oh no, where are you? Mac is responding to Ben Pessoa. J. Scott Phillips. My copy of The Rape of Europa just arrived. That was fast. Oh, you ordered a copy. You're gonna love it. You're gonna love it. It is. It is the thinking man's, the monuments man. Richard reads. We put a picture of Steve over raw meat as Dixon eats. uh, let's see here. Jasper Antonelli, Steve felt the walls closing in over that Jack the Ripper question. He was almost caught after 125 years. I still maintain it was Deb. And that it was done not with knives, but with boredom. NP Hunt, I think Jasper and Avid are both trying to batter me like a cod on the Scarborough coastline. I bet you've had a few of those in your time. The Spaminator says the crazy part was just me thinking that Mastiff could literally swallow that teacup Chihuahua. It seemed to make perfect sense to both of the dogs. There was a female in heat involved, so yeah, it does make perfect sense to the dogs. It has nothing to do with what you're seeing. If you're looking at it with superhuman primate eyes, you're seeing barely anything of what's going on. You're not paying attention to the posture. You can't detect the scent glands, the stuff that's coming out from the scent glands, and also from the mouth. You don't have any idea what you're looking at when you're looking at the position of the ears, the position of the skull, the direction of the eye contact, the nature of the snout, the positioning of the front legs, especially the front left leg. Humans just don't see it. They don't see what's going on. There's an elaborate conversation that's going on, and humans just don't see it. They don't see any of it. But it does make sense to the dogs. Take it from me. It does make sense to the dogs, and it doesn't have anything to do with physical size, not at all. Uh, Max says, "What do you think of Genius Makers by Cade Metz?" Also reading that along with Dominion. I like it so far. Genius Makers. I'm not sure I know that. I'm not sure I know that book. Uh, uh, I don't know that I can help you. I'm not sure I know that book. Richard Reeves, actually, Dixon would love and abandon us for Steve. I don't know about that. He would love me. I've seen enough video and photos to know he would love me. It would work best if Freeda wasn't around. If I met him without Freeda, oh my god, oh my god, it would be absolutely wonderful. It would also be incredibly fun to go on a nice long walk with Dixon. That would be a lot of fun. Not only because I'm sure that he would enjoy it a lot, but also because I mean, Freeda is a dominant dog, but she is 10 pounds. So she's not dominant in anything else. Whereas walking Dixon, I would be walking an atomic bomb on a leash. That would be incredible. Absolutely incredible. We could go anywhere. It'd be great. But it would be a lot of fun to canoodle with him. I feel certain that it would be a lot of fun to canoodle with him. And it's no insult. I have a knack with dogs. There's nothing insulting meant at all. I have a knack with dogs. They tend to really like me. Oh, Mac is responding to Jasper Antonelli. That reading guy, any more deadline writing for tonight? Yeah, I do. I mentioned it about 2 hours ago. Did you see me doing it? No. Said I'm talking with my imaginary booktube friends. I do. I have one little deadline thing that I have to do. I do tomorrow. Editor's perfectly cool about it, but I want to have it done by start of business. I want to just have it waiting for the editor in his inbox at 9. So I do have to do it. We still have to wrap up this Steve. Absolutely, we do. It's not much money. It's $575, so it's not much money, but I want to have it done. Uh, but anyway, that reading. We'll do a few more comments and then we'll wrap this up. I can't thank you all enough for this. This was so much fun. Uh, That reading guy says, how many reviews do you write in a day? Typically two. Trade reviews. So they have a format. They have a word count, and it's not long. Typically two. Uh, uh, Cram Cramerica Industries, Iron and Blood, Peter H. Wilson. That's it. That's the one. NP Hunt, right? I know it breaks rule number one, but honestly, Steve, I'm going to have to send you that play just to so that you know it actually exists. I'm sure that you could get something printed up by Justin. What was it again? Uh, Wanamaker, so the Boilermaker. Uh, uh, DT says, Steve, how much did you like B.R. Myers' Reader's Manifesto? I liked it quite a bit. How would you rank Myers to John Gardner's three books on writing? They're apples and oranges. They're not. There isn't any comparison between them. But the B.R. Myers book is wonderful reading. I strongly recommend it. I had a lot of people wondering if I was him. It can sound so similar to me, but we are two different people. Jasper Antonelli says now NP Hunt's writing project is going to be writing this fake play and sending it to Steve. Yes, yes. Uh, uh, the vegan heretic says, so we just started, right? No, we're ending, wrapping this up. Steve, is there any chance of something for the gays starter kit? I've been wondering. I have done a gay starter kit. There's no way I haven't. There's no way I haven't done that. At 6,000 videos, I have certainly done that. Street Medic, Genius Maker, someone wrote a biography of my parents. Oh my God. Richard reads, no insult. Dixon having Steve to love is a good thing. It would be, I mean, even if Freeda were there, she would read him the Riot Act. And then I'm assuming she would leave us alone. I would want to canoodle with him. I would want to face smooch with him. And then if I could, I would love to walk with him. I don't know that walking with him would work if I walked with Freeda, but I'd love to go out on walks with him. Oh my God, on every kind of backcountry road with an A bomb, with something that can handle a small bear. So I don't need to worry about anything that we encounter. That would be wonderful. Oh my, what a feeling that must be. Uh, Jasper Antonelli says, good night, Steve. Good night. Christina says, best chat / Stevestream ever. Why, thank you. But we do have to wrap this up. This has been so much fun. We've gone all over the map, which is always fun on a Stevestream. Especially fun since I don't think I'm going to be able to do one tomorrow. We'll see. I'm hoping the bare minimum I'm hoping for is I get to make a video or two tomorrow. I was thinking, I was just reflectively thinking, you should do a chapter every day for Hound of the Baskervilles so that you get it done in February. But really, I ought to do a chapter a day quickly because week one's prompt is to read a long novel, and we've already done that. Hound of the Baskervilles is that. What I ideally ought to do is start reading Sherlock Holmes short stories to you next week. But there's no way. We've still got a lot of Hound of the Baskervilles to go. NP Hunt says, what do you think of discoverers, creators, DVD, and seekers? That DVD a typo? The Borston books. I love them. I think they're really, really good. Uh, I'm assuming that's a typo. Max says, Genius Makers is a book that chronicles the rise of deep learning in AI. Surely the great Steve Donahue has read it. I don't recognize that title. Anti-Guy says, spoiler, Angels in America is number one. Well, Angels in America would have been on such a list. I feel certain that I've done that video. There's no way that I haven't. Geo Craftsman, you indeed did do a gay starter. Okay, great. Joshua Crabo, I think you have, Steve. I will look for it. All right. That reading guy says, Steve has many starter kits to create for homework after this stream. Connor says, Connor says, Steve, could you make a Western canon starter kit? Don't you think you've made that one yet? I did a whole series on Western canon starter kit. What is going on here? The Spaminator, look, just face it, you've neglected the starter kits. It's the best thing you do. I don't think I have. I think there are hundreds of them. Gandhi Angles, will you be doing a part 2 to your recent biography video? I could. Sure. NP Hunt, before you end, I'll say goodbye just from Justin Timberlake Wootenbrick. That reading guy, it's the Western Canon Starter Kit Part 2 that he hasn't done yet. He might be holding back out of spite already. No spite. There's no spite in me. Street Medic, good chat, but I know you need to go take care. Max's Presidential Library. The Presidential Library series stopped 5 years ago. It stopped 5 years ago. So it might be good to stop waiting for it. It might be good to do that. J. Scott Phillips, maybe this isn't going to be a starter kit, but what's happened to the late 20th century canon? I do still sometimes think of that. 1950 to 2000. That would be fun to put that kind of a list together. 100 books. That would be fun. Risen Reed's got to go. Be well. I have to go as well. So we're going to wrap this up. We'll wrap this up at 10. Joshua Crabo says good night, Steve. Oh no, we can. Oh, everybody's saying good night. All right, so we can wrap this up before 10. Great, great. Uh, uh, so we'll just wrap this up since everyone's saying good night. We'll just wrap this up because this was wonderful. Thank you very very much. I got a lot off my chest. Got a lot of subjects covered, and I informed you about writing. I am now fully involved in the writing collective, which means you have to be too. Whatever grace period you had from the Borg Queen not being involved is now over. I now have a project and I'm writing every day, which means you have to too. So come up with a project and tell me what it is. So I'll wrap this up for now. I hope I'll see you all tomorrow. I hope there'll be videos tomorrow, at least one, at least two. I doubt there'll be a Stevestream. Workman. All I have to do is hear that word and my blood goes cold. Um, but we shall see. Maybe it'll be better than I think. But I'll wrap this up for now, and I'll be back. Thank you all. Thank you all so much.